Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Sam walked sluggishly home. He already knew that he was going to be punished by his father. The boy was angry not so much at his father William, who would punish him, but at his sister Nancy, who had told his father everything. And the thing is, Sam's dad fixed the old tape recorder, and he was very proud of it. William kept his rarity in his shed, which he used as a workshop. The man forbade the children to enter the building in his absence. However, as they say, forbidden fruit is sweet, and Sam and Nancy, and when Dad was fishing, secretly went into the workshop. The boy was more interested in hooks for swimming trunks, but Nancy wanted to listen to the tape recorder. She asked her brother to help her turn it on. Sam complied with the request. A song came on, but after a few minutes the sound became disgusting. Nancy, 9 years old, capriciously said to her brother Sam. Sam had already picked up his fishing gear and wanted to run to his friend Ben's house sooner to go to the lake. But his sister wouldn't let him go and begged him to help fix the tape recorder. Sam realized that he could not get rid of Nancy just like that and suggested to her that you can fix the tape recorder yourself. And after this phrase, the boy explained what parts should be greased in the tape recorder. Nancy, hearing her brother's words, agreed, nodded, and clapped her hands joyfully. Sam looked at his sister with a smirk and added, just be careful not to overdo it with the oil. And don't stay here too long, so that your father doesn't catch you here, or you'll be full of mushrooms. Well, I'm out of here. Ben's already raising me. And after that, the 14-year-old boy jumped out of the barn and ran to his friend's house. Sam hoped that his sister would be out before his father got there, but the opposite happened. The guy and Ben had already been sitting at the lake for about 2 hours when he saw Nancy walking towards them. Sam immediately suspected something wrong and shouted to her, "What's wrong? Is your father waiting for you at home?" "Why?" asked the teenager tensely. "He came in earlier than usual today and found me in the barn. I was just turning on the tape recorder. Dad got angry and asked me if you were here. And I said yes, you could have kept me here. Why did he come home so early? I didn't ask him that." And now Sam was walking home, realizing what he was about to get from his father. Only the teenager entered the courtyard, followed by his sister, as William raised his eyebrows at the sea of questions about who allowed him to enter the workshop in his absence. Sam quietly replied that no one had. And then the father asked a completely unexpected question to the teenager. "How did you advise your sister to fix the tape recorder?" The boy looked perplexed at his father and told William listen to his son, and then threateningly said that advice should be given wisely. And as it turned out, Nancy lubricated the tape recorder, but only with butter. Sam glanced glumly at her sister. She saw her brother's angry look and said tearfully, "But you didn't tell me what kind of oil to use." "My father explained to me later that in these cases they use machine oil." After this incident, William gave the boy a few slaps and forbade the party for 3 days. Nancy, on the other hand, received no punishment. Her father explained that she was not at fault in this case, as she was still young and acting on the orders of her older brother. And it happened often that Sam received more from her father than Nancy. Soon the summer was over and it was school time. Brother and sister started school. Sam often teased Nancy, for which he often received from his father. The boy was angry at his sister. What was she? "I poor Dad and thought all the time how to get back at her. And then he got his chance. Nancy was to have a race for a certain distance, and she and her friend wanted to win in this event." The girl turned to her brother to think of a way to do it. Sam thought for a while and then told his sister there was only one way to finish first. To do that, before the race, put red pepper between your buttocks. But make sure you don't start the race before the signal. Don't tell anyone about my advice, or you'll be the first to finish. The day after the race, Sam was summoned to the school principal's office with his father. As it turned out, Nancy shared this advice with her friend, and the two of them used Sam's method. The girls won the race, but after the finish line they ran around the school for a few more laps. Nancy did not tell her mom and dad about her brother's advice, but her friend informed her parents, who immediately reacted and appealed to the principal of the school. and naturally, after another incident, Sam received a beating from his father. And as always, the punishment in the form of a ban on walking for several days. The guy after this case gave himself a vow that he would no longer tease his sister. Time passed, but Sam still occasionally teased Nancy, for which of course received. And yet he found a way to wean his sister off. My poor father, when the teenager once again teased Nancy. And she complained to Dad that the guy early in the morning before school to blow his nose in the school uniform of his sister. Sam immediately informed the girl that he would do so every time Nancy wanted to inform her father about his pranks. And Nancy just tolerated all of her older brother's antics after that. Sam teased his sister until he turned 16. And as soon as the teenager celebrated his birthday, it was as if he was replaced. The guy began to carefully monitor his appearance. This was noticed even by his father, who casually said to his son, "You, just as if you want to become the first guy in the village. You must have fallen in love that you are always hanging around the mirror." Sam only wanted to answer his father, but then Nancy appeared, who heard his father's words and reacted immediately. The girl said in a sarcastic tone, "Sam wants to show off to the new teacher who told him that he is growing up handsome." The years flew by imperceptibly, and soon Sam graduated from school. The young man already knew very well that he had a handsome appearance, as he had been told about it many times by his mother's acquaintances, as well as by girls from the village. Sam's friend, when he heard compliments in his friend's direction, wrinkled his nose in displeasure and said, "You're lucky you have good looks. You can finish any king. I'm not interested in that. I want to live large, and I'm not in danger of it, because now I'll go to college, get a profession, and earn little. Is that a life? I want to ride on a yacht, go to restaurants, travel abroad." Oh, where are you going?" Benjamin said with a laugh. "A normal dream for a good-looking guy. Maybe you want to twist the tails of cows in the countryside. I don't like that kind of work. Don't get all hot and bothered. If you want to live a nice life, you've got a chance. I'll use my looks and seduce a rich girl. And then you'll live a good life. I'll have to think about your proposal, but it won't work. I don't intend to get married and have screaming children who need diapers changed every half hour." Soon Sam entered college in the city, and from the village the boy left with a light heart. It was only difficult for him to part with his sister, over whom at one time he often stirred. The young man, though, joked about Nancy, but loved her very much, and if anyone offended her, he always stood up for her. Time flew by, and Sam graduated from college. The young man did not want to return home, as he did not see any prospects there. So he stayed in the city, rented a room for two with a student, and after that he got a job at the factory as a fitter. As soon as the guy worked for a week, he called his sister and told her how he was doing at the moment, and asked Nancy to tell his news to his parents. The girl promised to let her mom and dad know everything. She then inquired how he was doing on the personal front. Sam laughed and said that, like in the village, there were girls running after him in droves. Nancy smiled in return and said, "I didn't expect any other answer. You're a handsome boy, but be careful with your nighttime activities, or you'll be a father of many children at your age. It's too early for me to try on the role of a father," he said with a laugh, and immediately asked his sister if she had a boyfriend. Nancy indignantly replied that she was being courted by a young man, but that she was still thinking about it. After working for 6 years, Sam sighed doubtfully, for in that time he had not been able to save even $200. And all because of the fact that it was necessary to pay utilities, rent a room, as well as to eat and travel to work. And at the same time wanted to go to a nightclub to have fun. In this regard, Ben's suggestion popped up on the young man's mind that it was possible to take advantage of his appearance and charm a rich girl who would pay for his whims. Sam saw nothing objectionable in this. After all, he was not going to steal from anyone. The guy made a decision, and all he had to do was to find a girl from a wealthy family. He decided to find a rich person in a nightclub. Sam thought that such a contingent most often hangs out there, and the next day in the evening, the young man went to such an establishment. Sam took a not strong cocktail and stood at the counter. The guy looked closely at the fair sex, as well as what they were wearing and how they behaved. He thought that if a girl was from a rich family, She should be in a strong outfit and behave relaxed. And at one point, he was attracted to such a person. The girl was dressed in a golden top leather black skirt. With 2 slits on the sides, she danced with a friend, holding in one hand a flute with a cocktail. The girl laughed casually. Guys often approached her, but she immediately opened them with a glance. Sam decided to try his hand at courtship and approached the stranger. The guy raised his glass to the top and, trying to shout over the music, said that he was raising a flute to the pristine beauty. The girl looked at him with interest, but immediately asked him to back off. The young man inwardly traits, but did not back off and said, "I understand that damn beautiful young ladies so and should behave towards you himself. And if for a moment to imagine that I am not from this contingent and give me a chance to interchange with you a couple of phrases, I'm interested. Besides, you're cute too. What do you want to get me a drink? Actually, I'm used to being served by the ladies. But in this case, let's make an exception. Let's go to the bar and choose. Are you a ladies' man?" The stranger said with surprise. Sam realized that he had said something stupid. He quickly realized that it was necessary to save the situation. Therefore, the first thing that came to mind said to the interlocutor, "Why so rude? I just have a high demand from the fair sex. Sometimes I'd even have to fight back. Now I see you are Naburietsia Price." With a laugh said the girl, and then added, "How cocky are you? Come on, let's go to the bar." Soon the couple stood near the bar and sipped a cocktail. They chatted casually. Sam learned that the girl's name is Lily. She's 19 years old, studying at university. Her father is a big official and her mom is an entrepreneur. The young man, having learned the details of the internal, was jubilant that he made the right choice when he approached the girl. Then the couple danced and, already for 0 o'clock, left the night establishment. The young people went outside and the girl headed for a foreign car. The guy remained standing in place. Lily turned around and asked why he was frozen like a statue. Sam said he was uncomfortable with the girl driving the car by herself. Lily laughed and said, "Do you know how to drive? Then get in the driver's seat and I will show you where to go." Soon the young people arrived at the given address. The couple walked into the 2-room apartment they had previously owned. Sam immediately assessed the surroundings. He mentally instructed himself that it was necessary to please this girl this night so that she would want to meet again. And there the guy decided that he would figure out how to manipulate her. Sam's plan succeeded. The next morning when he woke up, there was a cup of coffee and a plate of fat in front of him. The girl sat next to it and looked at him adoringly. The man sipped the flavored drink and immediately heard you were inimitable. "Let's spend the whole day together, drive around the city, go to decent cafes, and then come back to my place. Your offer is tempting, but I can't afford the pleasures of life. You know that. Who told you you'd be paying? I'm the one who proposes it, so I'm the one who finances it." Lily said with a smile. "Maybe you'll give me some cash. It's a bit awkward having a girl pay for you, isn't it? I like the way you think. We'll go to an ATM. I'll withdraw the money, and you'll pay for all the services yourself." After that day, Sam started seeing the girl a lot. They'd been dating for a little over 2 months. Lily gave money to the guy, but it was small amounts. And all because of the fact that the girl was financially dependent on her parents' money. Sam didn't like that. He wanted the mistress to be independent of others, and her money was managed by herself. That is why the young man decided to part with Lily. When they met again, he told her about it, which caused a flurry of emotions. And then the unexpected statement of the girl, "You cannot leave me, as I am pregnant by you." That's a lie. What's the point of me lying to you? So you have to terminate the pregnancy because I'm not going to be a father. If you go against my will and have a baby, you won't get much since I have a small salary. The young man said stiffly and left the apartment. Later he found out that Lily had lied about the baby. She just wanted to keep the guy close to her. However, after such a statement, Sam concluded for himself that in the future it is necessary to use contraception. Now that the guy realized what kind of girl he needed, he decided that it was necessary to look for her not in a nightclub, but through a marriage agency. And soon he already had enough applicants. He chose a prettier woman, who was 34 years old. After a while, the man sat with the girl in a cafe and had a nice conversation. He actually liked her. It was a slender brunette with refined facial features. Her name was Betty. From the girl, the young man learned that she is an entrepreneur, has her own boutique, lives in a 2-room apartment in a dormitory district. She has a Chevrolet automobile. Betty asked the young man to tell her about himself. The young man did not make up anything about himself and told it like it is. His biography. The woman after his story looked at him thoughtfully, and then said, "And why are you so handsome? And do not get acquainted with peers. With them is not interesting. I am more attracted to women who are wise and like to talk to them. There's something to talk about and it's nice to enjoy. What about you? I see you're a frank young man. Well, let's try to meet you. Maybe we can make the perfect family." The couple started dating. Betty was good with Sam. He could turn an ordinary day into a holiday. With his noble character, the man also enjoyed socializing with the woman, and he often teased her like he used to tease his sister. Betty took no offense at Sam for this, until a certain point. It was when the couple was already dating. For the 3rd month, Betty was at work, as the downstairs neighbor called and said that she was being flooded from her apartment. The woman immediately closed her store and hurried home, calling the plumber in advance to come. Betty entered the apartment and hurried to the bathroom, but there was no water running. She went to the kitchen, but it was dry there too. The woman shrugged her shoulders perplexedly and wanted to go to her neighbor to find out why she had deceived her. But then Sam came out of the room to her and said, "See how great I've made your day off. I should call and tell her you're flooding the neighbor. How are you already here? Do you realize what you're doing? I called the plumber, and now I'm gonna have to pay for a false alarm. I got ripped out of work on a Sunday when it's busiest, which means at this time I'll lose the opportunity to sell something and therefore no income. I don't understand how a neighbor could go along with your scam and call me and collect it. What's there to understand?" With a smile said the guy and continued, "Money makes everything. I paid my neighbor to make that call. You're laughing. I give you money and you spend it recklessly. You're your own beggar's brood. And in a way, I'm even supporting you. Maybe you think there's no substitute for you. Then you're sorely mistaken. Whoa, you're gonna insult me now. Look, I can leave. Good riddance. You weren't gonna start a family with me anyway." After saying that, Sam spit over his shoulder, threw the keys to the apartment and left. The man thought that Betty would cool down after a while and call. But that didn't happen. The young man would have called himself, but he was stopped by Betty for insults. Sam feared that the woman could call him a beggar one more time, and he would not be able to hold back. After the unsuccessful affair with Betty, a couple of months passed, and Sam reapplied to the marriage office. But now the guy decided for himself that it is necessary to look for a woman who does not shine beauty, and come up with a legend that she gave a large sum, and after receiving the finances simply evaporate from her life. Sam soon selected a candidate named Emily. He met the woman in a cafe. As in the first case, the young man tried to be with Emily, courteous while skillfully giving her compliments. In conversation with the woman, he learned that she was 36 years old. She owns an atelier, lives Emily, in a 2-bedroom apartment, has a car, and she has a 9-year-old son growing up. Sam told a legend about himself that he's in the construction business. He has a brigade, although in fact he continued to work at the factory, lives in another city, and here he rents a room. And also the man told the interlocutor that he loves classical music. Sam specifically said this, as he read in the woman's profile that she was partial to this genre. When the man said about his hobby, Emily looked at the young man with interest, which did not escape the interlocutor. They spent the first 2 weeks just spending time talking about various topics. And soon Emily offered Sam to stay overnight at her place. The man was not excited about the relationship with this woman, but he stubbornly went to his goal to get money from her. And what annoyed the guys the most was that he had to listen to classical music, which he hadn't liked since childhood. It had been more than 2 weeks since Sam had taken up residence at Emily's place, and he decided it was time to act or else. When the woman once again turned on classical music under the night's entertainment, he would just break all the discs. The man came to Emily in a tortured state. The woman immediately noticed that the lover was not in the mood. She asked what had happened. The young man began to ask the landlady not to worry about him. However, Emily saw that the man was eating something, and the woman persistently asked her lover what happened. "I have a little problem at work, but I do not want to burden you with them. You have enough worries of your own. Spit it out. How do you not realize that your problems, they become my problems too? Or are you saying that when you talked about living together, it was just words? How could you think I was lying to you? Of course I love you. I just wanted to keep you out of trouble. But if you insist, I'll tell you. Anyway, I had a little hiccup at work, and I pay my workers at the end of every week. And right now I don't have any money, and I need a lot. It's not much, but it's a lot. We're not hackers," the man said, and then voiced how much money is needed. Emily thought for a moment, and then smiled softly and said, "It's not that much. I will give you the money, but only in a couple of days. Now just smile and don't be sad about it anymore." "Thank you, my sonny," smiled, said Sam, and kissed the woman gently on the lips. And to himself mentally damned that he asked for too small an amount. 2 days later, Emily brought the money to her lover. The man thanked the woman and thought that tomorrow his torment would be over, because he would no longer return to this apartment and would not hear this hateful classical music, from which he was already sick. Sam said goodbye to Emily the next day as usual. He said that he would be home at the proper time in the evening, and then he discreetly gathered his things and slipped out of the apartment. Then he bought a new SM card and vanished from Emily's life forever. In the shower after leaving the woman, the man wished her mentally that she would meet a decent man who would listen to classical music with her. The money he had gotten was enough to live at his pleasure for 3 months. Now the young man thought that it was necessary to save up as much money as possible in order to open his own business in the future. Sam did not yet know exactly what kind of business he wanted to have, but he decided for himself that he would definitely become an entrepreneur. When the money ran out, Sam wanted to go to the same marriage office again. But then he realized that it was not worth it. He didn't even realize why he decided that, and now the man was on his way to another agency. Sam just wanted to stop by the agency. How did his cell phone ring? It was the sister. The guy answered and immediately heard the happy voice of Nancy. "Hey, little brother, I'm getting married in a month. I look forward to your congratulations. Is your beau right to propose?" "That's right. He came yesterday to ask me to marry him. So my sister will soon be wearing a wedding ring on her fingers. And congratulations. I'll be owed a tidy sum by the day of the wedding. And you're still living off women. Why have you stopped doing that? It's not gonna end well. Nancy, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. All right, I'll call you later. They're waiting for me at the office." And after that, the man disconnected the connection. And at the same moment, he thought that he was in time to express his desire to visit the marriage office again. After all, his sister must be given the money. Soon Sam was already sitting in the cafe again and got acquainted with another woman, whose name was Vanessa. The man told about the fact that he worked in a construction company and that he was a vegetarian. Sam also learned about this from the woman's profile after his story. Sam invited the interviewee to inform him about herself. The woman smiled and then looked at him with a rather frank look, as if undressing the man, and told him her biography. She said that she was 35 years old, worked as a storekeeper, and had a store selling cosmetics. She lives in a 2-room apartment, where in addition to her 2 parrots live. The woman also said that she has been married twice, but life didn't work out. Sam noticed the look with which the woman examined him at the meeting and immediately realized that this lady had not been in bed with a man for a long time. This fact pleased Sam, as it meant that the candy bouquet relationship would not last long. When Sam listened to Vanessa, he immediately realized that he had not heard from her whether she had a car, so he asked her about it under a plausible pretext. The woman smiled and said, "I have a car, but I don't drive. The car has been in the garage for about 5 years. The thing is that my second husband and I were in an accident. And ever since then, I've been afraid to drive myself. That's okay. You'll get over it with me, and I think you will. But maybe we'll switch to you so it is more interesting to communicate," said the smart woman and threw a leg over a leg. As you say, my queen. And on the same day, Vanessa invited Sam to her home. The man found himself at the woman's apartment, exulted that it was so easy to charm this person. In the meantime, Vanessa offered to pass to the young man in the hall and settle down as at home. What Sam did. After a while, entered the living room and the owner of the apartment, who had changed into a short silk robe of azure color. The woman was holding a tray with a bottle of wine, a couple of glasses, and a vase with various fruits. When the man saw all this, he hurried to help Vanessa carry it to the coffee table. The couple then took a seat in the armchair that faced each other. Sam looked at the woman, and once again it hit him. The thought that there would be a lot of money to be made out of this very spectacle, but it was only necessary to act wisely. And with these thoughts, he filled his glasses and made a toast. To our future together. And to himself, he wished himself a speedy and successful completion of the scam. A few days went by when Sam moved in with Vanessa. He had no idea that this woman was so insatiable in bed. It seemed to him that she was squeezing all the juices out of him. The man couldn't say it didn't suit him. He loved it, loved being with Vanessa, but annoying and different. Namely, that he had to physically work hard at his job and then at night fulfill his manly duties without eating any meat. Sam realized that in this way he would soon die. That's why right after the factory he started to go to cafes, where he bought himself a meat-calorie dish. Time moved imperceptibly, and his sister's wedding day was approaching. Sam realized that it was time to act further, and he decided to continue in the same spirit as it was last time. The man, as always, came home from work in a dejected state. He tried not to speak much verbally to Vanessa. And naturally, the woman became alarmed and began to question him. Sam at first denied and said that everything was fine, but then he confessed that there was not enough money to pay the workers' wages. The woman recognized the man's amount and said that she had some savings, but it would not be enough to cover the wages. Sam replied that it would be possible to give at least some money to the workers, and then he would make it on his own. The man promised that he would pay back all the money soon. Vanessa withdrew the money and gave it to her lover. Sam thanked the woman and said that he had to go home for a few days, as his mother was ill. Vanessa sympathized with her lover and wished her mother a speedy recovery before leaving. Sam soon left for home, but only not to check up on his mother, as she was short, but to get to his sister's wedding. And here he is already in the registry office and watches Nancy exchanging wedding rings with the groom. And then the guests and relatives give a friendly shout to the newlyweds, bitterly and bitterly. Then everyone goes to the cafe, where the feast begins and the celebration is in full swing. The toastmaster announces that it is necessary to congratulate the young. Guests and relatives begin to put envelopes with money on the tray. When the turn comes to Sam, he rises and says, "I do not know how to say beautiful words in such cases, but I would like you to use the contents of this envelope to go to a resort and have a good vacation." The man then places a rather impressive envelope on the tray and then takes a seat at the table. On the second day of the wedding, the sister discreetly approaches her brother and asks him to step aside with her. She whisperingly asks him if he robbed a bank. The man laughs and replies that he didn't. Nancy embarrassedly says that he gave so much money that he could go to the sea and buy a dishwasher to top it off. Sam hugs his sister and wishes her nothing but happiness in her married life. The next day, the man leaves the village and goes to Vanessa in the city. He brought some goodies from home to treat the woman and let her know that he really went to see his mother. Vanessa is happy to meet her lover and passionately whispers in his ear that she missed him tremendously. It was more than 2 months before Sam started living with Vanessa. The man realized that it was time to act further, but he could not think of a strategy to borrow money from the landlady. But he was helped in this by the woman herself, with an unexpected question: "Dear, how are you doing in the construction company?" "Not bad." "Why do you ask?" "Because you borrowed money from me to pay the workers' salaries. So I thought if you're doing well, I could pay you back. I'm just saying that because you can put the money back in the bank for interest. It makes sense. You're right. I'm such a fool for borrowing money and not paying it back. And you probably think I'm a fraud now because of that, don't you?" "I didn't think so. Now I feel guilty for asking." "Stop saying that. I just think you and I need to expand our business. Maybe I should take out a loan to start a second construction firm. And then you and I can go on our honeymoon to the coast. I have another suggestion. Why pay extra interest when you can sell my car, which is worthless? You've got your money's worth, and we'll get you an expensive car. You got a point. Then maybe you wait with the money I'd borrowed from you. They're just in circulation. But if you want, I can pull it out at any time. You don't have to pay me back in this case. We just decided that we're going to move on in terms of material resources. Soon Vanessa sold the car and handed the money over to Sam. The man, as usual, thanked the woman, and after 3 days he retreated from her apartment. When he left the house, he looked back at the windows of the second floor, where he lived for several months, and mentally wished Vanessa to find a worthy life partner and be happy with him. It was only after that Sam went on with ease. This time Sam kept a small amount of the proceeds from the sale of the car to live on. The rest of his finances he put under interest. The man knew that he needed to save up a certain amount of money so that he could start his own business. A couple of months passed and Sam went to the marriage agency again. And again he met a woman. Courtship and then a short stay. After the legend that there is not enough money to pay his salary and, as a consequence, to get money. True, this time the man did not get as much money as in the case of Vanessa. After some time, Sam visited the marriage agency again, and again he had good luck. Sam was happy that everything was going so smoothly for him, and he was going towards his goal. The man realized that he would not live like this all the time, that he was doing this for the sake of achieving his goal. But at the same time, Sam, somewhere in the depths of his soul, dreamed of meeting the one and only one with whom he would like to connect his life and go through all the joys and sorrows with her. However, for so many years, no woman really touched his heart, and sometimes the man wondered if maybe he wasn't meant to truly know love. A few months had passed since his last relationship with a woman. Sam was on his way to his rented room after work when his sister called him. The man happily answered and immediately asked how she was doing. Nancy at the same moment interrupted her brother and created everything as fine. I am even doing wonderfully well. I can congratulate you as you will soon become an uncle. I'm pregnant. Can you believe it? I'm gonna be a mom. That's news. Sam said in a confused voice in response. I knew you'd be happy about it. You're going to be my godfather after a while. So try to find a bride by the time the baby is born so that my baby will have a godmother. After talking to his sister, Sam thought about it. The man involuntarily invited Nancy that she had arranged her personal life, and there was a loved one beside her. But at the same moment, he pushed these thoughts away from himself and began to think that it was time to continue the work he had started and go to the intended goal. The man soon went again to the marriage office, but only this time he reapplied to the agency, where he had previously chosen Vanessa. He thought that in that marriage office is more promising to find a rich bride, which can be easily divorced for a decent amount. And now the young man is already sitting in the office, choosing a candidate. As soon as he picked up a woman, he immediately set a date with her. However, this time Sam's scheme failed, because on the second date with the woman, whose name was Valentina, he was arrested for fraudulent actions. The man denied the charges against him. Investigator Trevor listened with a chuckle as Sam asked for evidence from the man in uniform. In response, he held out a picture of Emily and Vanessa to the detained man and pronounced these are just two women who have been affected by your fraudulent actions. But I think there are many more victims. These two citizens filed a police report, and after that, it was easy to track you down. So I suggest you now make a clean confession of all your deeds and go on with a clear conscience. But I didn't do anything wrong. I was looking for a woman to start a family with. But after living with these ladies for a while, I realized we weren't right for each other. So I left, and they offered me the money themselves as financial help. Do you believe yourself? You're talking nonsense right now. To begin with, you reminded these women that you work in a construction company and you need to pay your employees. That's the same story you told your new friend Wendy, who almost victimized you. I suggest you come clean, not play the groom. Believe me, we will find other women who have been victimized by your fraudulent schemes. All right, I'll tell you. "Tell me, will I get much for this?" Sam asked me shakily. "I'm not a judge to pronounce a sentence. All I can tell you is that you'll get a fine. In any case, a prison sentence, as the court decides. But I didn't do anything to get locked up. Yes, I've lived with women whom I given pleasure to, and they've wanted it. You have to admit, they weren't forced to date me. So why should I face jail time?" Sam said with fervor. "You still present yourself to me as a hero who committed crimes for the good of the people." "Let's not philosophize on this topic," said Trevor, and immediately, smiling, continued to say, "You must be a passionate lover." That one of the affected women made an ambiguous proposal. This is the first time in my practice, and I am, frankly, amazed. "What kind of proposal?" Sam said in a perplexed voice. "It's better that you find out from her. So this proposal will sound more convincing than from my words," said the investigator, and offered the glory to go with him. A few minutes later, Sam entered another office where Vanessa was sitting. Trevor told the woman that she had 15 minutes and that he would wait outside the door. The visitor nodded in agreement and thanked him. As soon as the investigator left the office, Vanessa immediately rushed to hug Sam. The man stared dumbfounded at the woman. He couldn't understand how this lady could hug him after all that had happened. Sam expected from Vanessa reproaches, insults, but not this. The young man pulled away from the embrace and politely said, "I'm embarrassed in front of you. I deceived you. But let's get to the point. The investigator said you have something to offer me. I want you to tell me now." Vanessa looked affectionately at her lover and said that she was ready to withdraw her application if he would fulfill her request. And then the woman said that she wanted Sam to legalize the relationship with her and also to write a receipt that he would live with her forever. She would then take it to a notary together with him. Afterwards, the visitor added that if he agrees, he will probably be given a suspended sentence, and she would help to pay the fine. The man looked at Vanessa in bewilderment, and the latter looked at him with adoration. Sam didn't know what to say. And at that moment, the investigator came into the office. He said that time was up. The woman turned to her lover for an answer, and he categorically and unexpectedly said no way in hell. And after these words, the young man got up and went to the exit. And immediately he heard from Vanessa in reply, "But then don't expect any mercy. I'll ask that you get the full measure of it." As soon as Sam and the investigator left the corridor, Trevor turned to the man and asked why he had refused a lucrative offer. Sam turned to the man in uniform and, seeing a smile on his face, asked, "Are you kidding me?" "No, just curious." "Then you have no idea what it's like to work hard and then come home, eat vegetarian food, and then make love to a woman at night. But that's the way you chose to make your money. And as they say, every job has its flaws. It's been a while." Sam was waiting for his trial in the detention center, and then his sister came to check on him. She was crying and scolding her brother that he had jumped to his feet with his relationships with women. The man asked his sister not to worry and told her that he would not do it again. Nancy countered by taking him at his word that he would keep his word. Sam reluctantly promised his sister. He thought he would be given probation for his fraudulent actions. Soon the trial took place. The man's expectations were not met. Sam was sentenced by the judge for his deeds, fined and imprisoned for 1 year and 4 months. The man could not believe that he would have to spend so much time in confinement. Soon Sam was already serving his sentence. He often reflected on his life, analyzed where he had made mistakes, that he ended up behind barbed wire. And also the man dreamed that as soon as he was released, he would start a new life. After all, he promised it to his sister. Time flew by and Sam was released. His sister met him with her husband and baby. Sam, while still in prison, knew that Nancy had given birth to a baby girl who was named Kelly. So as soon as he stepped outside the prison gates, he first hugged his sister and then asked to hold his niece in his arms. Sam gently took the baby girl in his arms and looked at her face, and then said, "She's as beautiful as you are, Nancy. Now you and your husband need to think about making sure she has a protector. So start working on a baby brother for Kelly. Let your daughter grow up to at least 2 years old. "And then my husband and I will consider your proposal," Nancy said with a laugh, and immediately asked her brother what he was going to do next. Sam looked at his sister seriously and replied that he was going to live and earn an honest living. Nancy nodded contentedly and said that she loved him very much and welcomed his decision. After his release, Sam took a job as a laborer on a construction site, renting a room in advance. His sister gave him money for the first time. The man promised Nancy that he would soon pay her back. The young woman laughed in response and said that there was no need to do that, as the money was a gift to him for deciding to live like a human being. It has been 2 years since Sam was released. All this time, the man felt that he was living like a robot. He went to work after going straight home, where he cooked a meager dinner, which he consumed alone. And after eating, the man sat down in front of the TV and watched all the programs indiscriminately. Glory was often approached by women who worked at the construction site for this or that help. The man was well aware that they did this for a reason, but in order to capture his attention. However, Sam was indifferent to them, as no representative of the fair sex interested him. And if he met with girls, it was a short-term relationship. And from this circumstance, the man was also not easy on his soul, his outlet. There were only conversations with his sister on the phone. And here in one of the days when Sam came home after work, the cell phone rang. It was his sister calling. He gladly answered, and the first thing he did was to ask how she was doing. The young woman told him about her daughter and also about her parents. Then she added that she had news for him. Sam was intrigued, asked if the news was good. "You asked me once about your friend." "Well, he's in the village to visit his parents. He came by and asked how you were doing. Now your friend has become a rich man, and grandfather drives a foreign car so much. I wanted to give him your phone number, but then I thought, what if you don't want me to? You should have. I'd love to talk to him. It's an easy fix. I can see him through the window, walking down the street with his wife and kid. I can call him over and you two can talk. You want to? Go ahead." And within minutes, Sam was on the phone with his friend. They talked for a while. From Benjamin's words, the man learned that he had married a woman with a child, who was an entrepreneur. And now he and his wife had opened another store where Benjamin was already the boss. And also the friend added that soon they are expecting a child together, and that he is happy in life. After the conversation with Benjamin, Sam became upset. He remembered the conversation with his friend when they graduated from high school. After all, then the friend did not even dream about a good life. But Sam had dreamed of it. And now it turned out so that Benjamin lives happily, and he is satisfied with a meager salary and still has not settled his personal life. And yet he's approaching 35 years of age. The realization of this darkened the man's mood, and he decided to go to a cafe to unwind. Sam, not thinking long, got ready and left the apartment. The man walked down the street and kept thinking how lucky his friend was in life. He didn't notice that he had walked a few blocks. And then Sam saw a restaurant in front of him. Initially, he thought that he should not come here because the prices would be huge. And at the same moment, the man mentally scolded himself, saying not loudly, out loud, once a year, "I have the right to relax in an expensive restaurant." And with these words, he entered the establishment. The man ate dinner, and then, when the waiter came up with the bill, he was suddenly horrified when he saw the amount. Sam could hardly suppress a sigh of disappointment. He took out his wallet and counted out the required amount. And as soon as he left the restaurant, he regretted that he had entered this place at all. Sam came home in a disgusted mood. He still had a residue from the conversation with his friend. The man couldn't understand why Ben, who looked unattractive, had managed to settle down so well in life. But he himself, with his charming looks, can't find a well-off girl to love. And Sam was also nervous that today he had given a lot of money in a restaurant, and all because he wanted to feel like a rich man. Time slowly moved on and another year flew by unnoticed. Sam took a vacation and went to the village to visit his relatives. As soon as the man entered the house, he saw his mother crying. Sam frowned and asked what happened. The old woman said Kelly had fallen ill. She was admitted to the regional hospital. The doctors say she has something serious and will soon need an operation, which is better done in big cities. Nancy can't find a place to be. She roars like a beluga, day and night. Why didn't she call me and tell me about this? I thought you knew everything. Crying, the mother said. Where is Nancy now? She should be back from the hospital, the old woman said mournfully and cried again. The son hugged his mother and asked her not to worry, saying that he would think of a way to help his sister. Sam, after talking to his mother, went out into the yard. The man was angry at this point at his sister for not calling and telling him everything earlier. Sam was anxiously awaiting Nancy's return so that he could talk to her about his niece's illness. It was a little over half an hour later when the man saw his sister approaching the gate. Sam hurried over to Nancy and first asked the young woman why she had hidden about Kelly's illness. Nancy looked at her brother and immediately flooded with tears. Sam put his arms around his sister. His anger at the girl had already passed at that very moment. The man realized that if he himself was so worried about his niece, what state of mind was the mother in now, thinking about her child? Sam asked his sister to sit down on the bench and tell him everything. Nancy complied with her brother's request and consistently informed him about Kelly's illness. As soon as the man knew all the details, he hugged his sister and told her that they still had time to get money for the child's surgery. Nancy looked sadly at her brother and said, "My mother-in-law has given a small amount, and so have our parents. But these finances are like a drop in the ocean. My spouse tried to take a loan from the bank, but he was approved a small amount, not what he asked for. We are now waiting for the time to take this loan. Closer to the time, the doctors will say the exact time as our little one will need surgeries. Well, that's good. A little bit of everything, and we'll raise the capital. But I will ask one thing of you, that you don't do this again. You've never hidden the fact that you're in trouble from your own brother. Do you understand me?" "Yes, thank you for your support," Nancy said quietly. All evening, Sam, after talking to his sister, sat in thoughtfulness. The man absent-mindedly answered his father's or mother's questions. He wondered where he could get money. Sam realized that if he took a loan from the bank, he would not be approved for a large sum either. He also realized that it was unrealistic to borrow such a large amount of money. And then he remembered the struggle. Sam immediately went to his sister to get the number of his friend from her. Nancy looked at her brother with surprise and said, "Ben is your buddy, not mine. And I don't have his number. Go to his parents and get his phone number there. Do you want to ask him for money? It doesn't matter. Thanks for the tip," the man said and quickly left the house. Soon Sam went to the parents of a friend, where he learned the number of the buddy, and without wasting time, the man immediately called Ben. Sam, in a nutshell, outlined the situation to the interlocutor and immediately asked to lend him a decent amount of money. When Benjamin heard how much he wanted, his friend even whistled and said, "Do you realize how much you are asking for? I can't lend you that much, as my wife, and I have all the money in circulation. And to be honest, even if I had finances, I wouldn't give you such a sum, because you wouldn't have anything to pay back later. Nancy tells me you're struggling to make ends meet. You're a friend, but don't take offense to what I said. Ben's not a friend, you're more after what you said. Friends don't do that. I'm even bitter that I turned to you. Go on living and enjoying life. I'll never bother you again. And I hope I will never see you again," he said, and immediately disconnected the connection. The man felt an unpleasant residue from his conversation with Benjamin. He forced himself not to think about this conversation, and his thoughts were directed to where he could get money. Sam went to his parents' house. His sister came up to him and asked if he had called a friend. The brother responded by lying that he hadn't gotten through. The man did not want to discuss with Nancy at the moment the conversation about Benjamin and his rejection. Sam walked to the kitchen, sat down at the table, and thought about it. He realized that money would not come into his pocket on its own, but finances were necessary. The man realized that he could get the money only in the way he used to do. That is, by seducing a woman and getting her to pay him a large sum of money. Sam remembered that he had given his sister his word not to engage in this business anymore. But now there was no other way out. And at the same moment, the man thought of another option how he could get a tidy sum of money and keep his promise to Nancy. Sam decided that he would seduce a rich woman and marry her, and thus in the future he would not be in the dock for a swindle and would always have money. The man rubbed his hands together with joy that he had found such a good option. He immediately decided that he would look for a future bride in the capital. Sam believed that there are more opportunities to find there and faster wealthy women. The next day, the man notified the household that he was leaving. He told his sister that he would definitely get her money within 2 months. Nancy looked at her brother suspiciously and asked him if he was thinking of scamming women for money again. Sam gently kissed his sister on the cheek and replied that he had no intention of doing so. Soon the man arrived in New York. He rented a room and then wondered where exactly to meet a rich suitor. Initially, Sam wanted to go to a dingy office, but something stopped him from that. And at the same moment, the man's stomach sounded strongly. He immediately felt incredibly hungry. On the man's mind came the decision that first it is necessary to eat, and already on a full stomach to act. Next, Sam did not delay the planned action and soon left the rented room and went outside. The man decided that today he would definitely visit a restaurant. Perhaps there he would get acquainted with a woman. And here Sam already sat at the table and dictated the order to the waiter in uniform. As soon as the man dictated the dishes, he began to look around the restaurant. Sam noted with admiration that everything here is decorated exquisitely and without unnecessary decorations, as is usually done in cheap cafes. A few minutes passed and the waiter brought part of the order, saying that the hot dishes would be ready a little later. Sam nodded in agreement and prepared to start tasting the exquisite appetizer. But then his attention was attracted by a lush lady who sat at the table opposite. The stranger was looking sadly out the window while mixing a straw in her glass. She was a full woman of about 50 years of age who was dressed in a coffee-colored pantsuit. Sam looked at the stranger and the woman, as if sensing the gaze, turned to the man and looked at him questioningly. Sam involuntarily caught himself thinking that this woman was quite unhappy and obviously lonely. And he also realized that this lady was not poor. This conclusion appeared to him intuitively. And Sam got up from the table and approached her, and then politely said, "I see you are bored. Maybe I could keep you company. If you don't mind, I don't know what to tell you. On the one hand, you're a man with a strong-willed face, but no wedding ring, which suggests certain thoughts. On the other hand, I'm really bored. I'm curious to know the first side of your definition that brings you to mind. I'll answer. You're an interesting man to pay attention to a bun pulling up a cocktail. You're more likely to be interested in being with a hottie who has legs growing out of her ears and to be half my age. You're an interesting person. I'll be honest. It's not your looks that attracted me to you, it's your demeanor. But if you don't want to socialize, I'll be right back. Or rather, back to my table. Interested, young man, join us, we'll talk. Just tell me what exactly you are interested in my behavior." The man sat down next to me. He mentally realized that this woman was obviously a rich lady, but now Sam didn't know how to talk to her. Sam hadn't come up with a cover story for himself and was therefore a little nervous about it. The man didn't know what to tell the woman about himself, so he decided to act according to the circumstances. Sam offered to tell the woman about himself. The woman grinned back and said carelessly, "You're fast. Do you really think that I will tell the first person I meet everything about myself? Maybe you should tell me at the first meeting what my annual income is? You have pleased me now with your words, namely that you called our sit-downs with you the first meeting. I conclude from this that we will have more meetings, and not one, and not even two. And you are also a self-confident type," with a laugh, said the woman. "Maybe just a little. Let me start our dialogue differently. I would like to know your name and immediately suggest that we switch to the first name. It will be easier to talk that way. Well, we'll follow your plan. My name is Adriana. I'm 49 years old. I come here often because the food here is excellent. This is the first time I've seen your personality. Hence the conclusion that you're a stray pigeon. That's a pretty name you have. By the way, I want to say that you and shrewd madam, because I am actually a visiting pigeon here. I just got here today, decided to conquer New York. After losing business in my hometown," Sam said, and went on to tell the woman what his name was and how old he was. The woman listened attentively and then carelessly remarked that such a handsome man should definitely be married. Sam proudly took out his passport and held it out to the new acquaintance and said, "You can familiarize yourself with the document, where there is not a single stamp that I use to have the status of a married man." Adriana looked at the passport with interest, and then asked the interlocutor in surprise why he was not married. And then, without waiting for an answer, she said, "You don't have to answer that, as I have already guessed why you have never been married. You are obviously of a different orientation." Sam, hearing the words "new acquaintance," laughed and only after a while answered that his person does not attract the male sex at all. And then he added that he liked mature women with whom he could talk about various topics. Adriana, after these words, already looked at the man more interested, which did not hide from Sam. Then the couple started talking about New York. Sam tried to compliment her as often as possible under a plausible pretext. The woman heard beautiful words from the new acquaintance and tried not to react to them. But Sam saw perfectly well that she was pleased with these compliments. It took about 2 hours for the couple to communicate with each other. During this time, Sam learned that the interlocutor lives in a 3-room apartment, has a dacha in the Moscow region and a car. The owner of the travel agency was married. But life did not go well, and she and her husband separated. There is a child, a son, who is currently studying abroad. Sam listened to all this information carefully, and he was satisfied that he had sat down with this woman. The man realized that Adriana, like no one else, was very suitable for the role of a wife. And now Sam was thinking how to charm this lady even more. Meanwhile, the woman called the waiter and asked him to bring the bill. Sam realized that now the new acquaintance would pay and leave, and this was not in the plans of the man. That's why he said, "And you just like that you will leave now. I was hoping we could still have a good time and talk. I would suggest you to come to my place, but you realize that I will not surprise you there, because it is a rented room, where there is only 1 bed and a desk with 2 chairs. Are you asking me to visit? Are you in no hurry with your socializing? I thought we were modern people, and you obviously liked me. Why deny yourself the pleasure if we both don't want to part? I can't argue with you. Okay, let's go to my place, but we'll get some champagne on the way." Soon the couple left the restaurant, and the woman hailed a cab. Sam was surprised to ask why she did not drive her own car. Adriana said with a smile that if she goes to a restaurant for dinner, she allows herself not to drink a strong cocktail. And if she does it, she does not get behind the wheel of a car in an inebriated state. Sam listened to the interlocutor and said, "And you are not only a beautiful woman, but also wise. You will be lucky to have a man who can capture your heart. Today you have showered me with compliments from head to toe. That's how you should be complimented. You are a worthy woman, to whom I want to say only beautiful words," quietly said the man, and in one movement attracted the new acquaintance to himself. And then Sam embraced the woman and kissed her passionately on the lips. That night the man spent at Adriana's place. Early in the morning Sam got up, while his partner was still asleep, and went to the kitchen. The man wanted to make coffee and so opened one of the cupboards as from behind he heard the voice of the landlady of the apartment, who said, "And you're looking for something to eat. You don't hide jewelry and money in the kitchen. And you might have thought that about me," the man said glumly and turned to the woman. He came close to Adriana and said, "I wanted to brew the most beautiful lady a fragrant drink and serve it in bed. But I don't know where to find a pot and coffee. I like your coffee idea," the woman said with a smile and reached up to Sam's face to kiss him. The man at the same moment embraced his partner and nestled his lips on hers, and then abruptly pulled away and mumbled, "I don't think we need coffee now. We need to continue the night's fun. Well, go to bed." After a while, Sam was lying on his back and breathing heavily. Adriana sat next to him and ran her finger over the man's face. The woman looked at the guest and thought about something. Sam hugged the landlady and said that it was time for him to look for a job. Adriana grinned and said that today was Sunday and it was unlikely to find a job on that day. Then the woman offered the man a few days to get settled in New York. The man gladly accepted. 2 weeks had passed since Sam had met Adriana. All this time he was staying with her. The man complimented the woman every day when she arrived after work. always made sure to cook delicious meals. And Adriana loved it. It seemed to her that the man really loved her. And so one day she struck up a conversation. "I know you're looking for a job, but you're getting a lot of bad ones. Maybe let me talk to my cousin, and he'll come up with something decent for you. You don't have to talk to anybody. I'm a man, and I have to take care of myself. If I don't find one in 2 weeks, I'll go to my homeland." "Are you saying you'll leave me?" "I thought so," the man said disappointedly. "Who told you I'm quitting? I'll work shifts. I'll live with you 1 month and work the next. I'd ask you to marry me. But you'd refuse to marry an unemployed man. And you first offer, and then already think," the woman said slyly. Sam mentally rejoiced because that's what he wanted. The man knelt down on one knee in front of the landlady and quietly made her a marriage proposal. Adriana hugged the head of her lover and happily mumbled that she agreed to become his spouse, and immediately added that they would go to the registry office tomorrow. Sam didn't argue. He asked only one thing: "Let's not organize a lavish celebration. Let's just sign everything and that's it. We're not 18 years old enough to have a big party." "If you say so. But I have a little condition that you let me talk to my cousin about the job. You know it's not gonna work if you just sit at home and do nothing. We'll talk about it later." Soon the couple filed a registry office application. Sam knew he was getting married. He hid it from his parents as well as his sister. He thought that it could be announced after a while. The man himself did not realize why he made such a decision. And soon the couple signed. They celebrated the ceremony in the same restaurant where they met. Adriana sat and admired the white gold wedding ring. Across from her sat her already legal husband, who leisurely sipped champagne from a glass, looking at his wife. It had been a week since Sam had married Adriana, and then the man received a phone call from his sister, tearfully and through sobs, informing him that her daughter had gotten worse. An operation was required as soon as possible. Sam asked Nancy to calm down and said the money would be there within a few days. Mail. After his sister's call, he paced nervously around the apartment, thinking about how to ask Adriana for money. Sam did not know how his spouse would react to his request to borrow money. And when the wife came home, the man asked her to sit down to talk. Adriana saw that her husband was worried about something, so she patted him on the arm and spoke softly. "You don't have a face on you. Tell me what's wrong." "My sister needs money and a lot of it." "How much and for what purpose?" Sam said the amount and then told him about his niece. Adriana listened attentively to her husband, and when her husband was silent, she sat silently for a while and looked at the floor. At that moment, the man sat with his hands clenched in a fist and waited for his wife's decision. Adriana, after some thought, said that the sum was very large and she could not give it so easily. Then the woman added that she had not lived with Sam long enough to trust him with everything. The man did not like the words of his wife, and he nervously said, "Will you help me or not? If you write a receipt that my sister will give me these finances within a certain time. But I can't give you a receipt instead of my sister," the man said in a perplexed tone. "Then we are obliged not to give the money to your wife. I realize it sounds absurd, but you also understand me correctly. We have not had time to get together. How do you need a certain amount of money? What if in a couple of weeks you come and divorce me? If you want to take offense, this is the only way I'm gonna give you the money. You write a receipt that's notarized. I didn't expect that from you. Okay, I agree to your terms, but then let your brother find me a job and high-paying," the man said. He immediately called his sister and told Nancy that tomorrow he would transfer the required amount of money to her in the evening. The next day, Sam and his wife visited a notary. The man wrote a receipt and then received the money, which he immediately transferred to his sister. Nancy, as soon as she received the money, then called her brother and wondered where he got so much Sam. He hastened to reassure his sister and told her that he had been approved for a loan from the bank. Nancy thanked her brother and said that she and her husband would pay back the debt whenever possible. Sam chimed in response. "Let me go on about this nonsense. You don't have to give me anything. I gave the money gratuitously. The most important thing now is for my niece to get well as soon as possible." A month passed after Sam transferred the money to his sister. During this time, Nancy and her daughter had an operation in St. Petersburg, and the girl was on the mend. Adriana introduced her husband to her cousin Mark. The man was the director of a furniture factory. Sam immediately approached his new relative with a request to get him a job. Mark Markovich answered, "I'll take you to my factory. I'll give you the position of a small supervisor. But in fact, you won't have to do anything. In principle, you will be introduced to all the subtleties. Your companion. Let's just say that you'll only work your ass off and get paid for it. If you want to go deeper into the labor activity and promote yourself, then you'll have to take more responsibility and learn a few things. What do you think of my offer? I'm in. I'm tired of sitting at home and staring at the TV all day long. It'll give me some variety in my life." Soon Sam went to work, and in fact, the man was explained his duties, told what he had to do. Sam was well aware that the position was a fictitious one, and in fact, he did not have to do anything. After the first day of work, the man called his wife and asked her for a festive dinner. Adriana readily agreed and suggested celebrating the first day of work in a restaurant. Sam gladly agreed. And now the couple is sitting in the restaurant and having dinner. Sam enthusiastically tells how the first day of work went. The woman listens to her husband and thinks how good it is that Mark helped her husband with his work. It had been a month since Sam had gotten a job. The man felt as if life was passing him by. He was bored with his life. He didn't want to go home because he didn't want to see his wife's face. After all, he understood perfectly well what he had married this woman for. Work also did not bring joy, and the man went to the furniture factory only for a tick and often left work, not waiting for the end of the working day. And so Sam decided to leave the factory early to go for a walk in New York. The man packed up and left the factory. He walked down the street and looked at passers-by. And then his attention was attracted by a girl who was standing and feeding birds with a mug of bread. The man approached the stranger and politely inquired, "Can I keep you company?" The girl looked at the man and smiled coquettishly at him. And then she handed Sam a piece of bread and offered to help her in this business. In a few minutes, the couple were talking animatedly about the girl. The man learned that her name is Lola. She is 24 years old and works as a nurse in a hospital. She lives with her mom in a 2-room apartment. After the couple ran out of bread, the man suggested that the girl go to a cafe and continue the conversation. Lola did not refuse, and soon they were already sitting in the institution and drinking coffee. The man looked at the interlocutor and imagined how with her he could have fun in bed. The girl, as if reading his thoughts, said, "Probably anticipating that very soon you and I will make love." "How did you guess that?" Sam said, perplexed. "Yes, I could tell from the look in your eyes. You're undressing me with your gaze in the cafe. So I want you so much, if you understood everything from my look. Then offer me a place and let's go. Why waste precious time if our desires coincide?" The man laughed and then asked the girl to wait for him, and he quickly left the cafe. Sam hurried to the kiosk where they sold the press. He bought a newspaper. He found an ad for an apartment for rent and quickly called it. The man agreed with the landlady on his cell phone and then returned to Lola. And soon the couple was already at the rented apartment, where they made love. It took about 3 hours before the man lay on his back in satisfaction. He felt good with this girl, who did not ask unnecessary questions. At this moment, he imagined that very soon he would have to get dressed and return home to his hated wife. And at the same moment the phone rang. It was his wife, who capriciously mumbled, "Where the hell are you? The working day is long over, and you are not home yet? Don't worry, darling, I just decided to take a walk today. I'm going home to warm up dinner." After these words, the man turned to Lola and asked the girl if she liked everything. The young woman replied with a nod and immediately asked if they would meet again. Sam kissed his partner with a passionate kiss on the lips and replied that they would definitely see each other more than once. And then the man asked Lola to dictate his phone number. The girl complied with Sam's request, and after that the couple parted. Soon the man came home, where a disgruntled Adriana was waiting for him. The woman, not hiding her bad mood, asked Sam next time he wanted to go for a walk to put her on notice. The man shrugged in response and only asked, "I will be fed in this house." After meeting Lola a few days passed, Sam again wanted to meet the girl. He called her, made an appointment, and as before, the couple again rented a one-room apartment where they had fun. And then the man, as always, promised the girl that this meeting would not be the last. And after that, he gave the young woman a gold chain, which he had bought especially for her. A month flew by as Sam secretly met with Lola. He enjoyed seeing this girl. He enjoyed giving the young woman inexpensive gifts, which she gladly accepted. Sometimes Sam even wondered whether he would be able to start a family with Lola. However, he did not ask the girl a direct question. And so Sam wanted to see Lola again. The man, as always, called the young woman and scheduled a date at a rented apartment. Sam had left work on his lunch break that day. He wanted to spend as much time as possible with the girl today. Before the date, the man stopped by the store and bought Lola expensive perfume. And already soon Sam was in the nude in bed with a young woman. Suddenly the phone rang. The man, without looking, pressed the answer button, and hearing the greeting of his wife, quickly replied, "I'm not comfortable talking, I'm in a meeting. I'll call you back later." And only the man wanted to disconnect the cell phone as he heard the angry speech of his wife. "At the meeting, you say? Isn't that brunette you're reading the report now?" Rose eyes. "I'm calling you via video link." "Okay, honey, we're gonna have a short conversation. And not over the phone, but in person. I'll meet you at home immediately." The man looked at the screen of the phone perplexed. He was cursing himself for not looking at the cell phone when he turned it on. In the meantime, Lola got up and started to get dressed. Sam was now looking at the girl, who was almost dressed. The man called out to the young woman and suggested that they stay a little longer to talk. Lola glanced at her partner. She sat down next to him, asking him, "What do you want to tell me?" "You understand everything perfectly well. The wife is now obviously going to ask for a divorce. And I want to ask you if you want to marry me." "No, I was just seeing you for fun. I don't plan on getting married. At least not at the moment." "Do you mean to say that you have no feelings for me, and you are writing from a girl's answer?" The interlocutor said, surprised. "If you mean love, then I can say that I do not love you. I just feel good with you in bed. I like it when you give gifts, and that's all that keeps us together. In that case, it was the last time we'd see each other. I thought you loved me. Okay, go on, go, and I won't detain you any longer." As soon as the girl left the apartment, the man put his hands around his head and thought. He understood perfectly well that now a rather unpleasant conversation was waiting for him at home. Sam felt that he was in prostration. On the one hand, he was glad that everything had happened this way. After all, now he did not have to pretend to be a man in love with his own wife. But on the other hand, now meant that going to restaurants, trips to the racetrack, as well as visiting theaters, all this stops. The man sighed sorrowfully. After these reflections, he quickly gathered himself and then hurried home, where his angry spouse was waiting for him. And as soon as Sam entered the apartment, he saw that in the hallway there was a bag, and next to it a small package. The man passed into the living room, where the spouse was sitting in an armchair. The woman gestured to the second chair. Sam sat down and looked at his spouse, and the woman coldly said, "You are an excellent lover. Nothing can be said here, but that's your value. You do not need to explain popularly that after your treason, I'm not going to live with you. And I didn't find myself in a dumpster to be treated like that, and especially you, who's a real pauper. I'll file for divorce. You don't have to worry about that, do you? You'll have the state tax deducted from your paycheck, although you can't expect to get a paycheck. I hope you haven't forgotten that I have a receipt in which you agree to pay me the money. From now on, you are no longer my husband, but only a man who owes me money. And one more thing. You no longer work for my cousin. He'll fire you for cause. That's a little favor from me to you. Now you're free to go on your way, rolling around in bed." The man stood up. He wanted to answer the woman rudely, but he forced himself not to say any nasty words. Sam looked at the landlady and then put his hand in his jacket pocket and wanted to go to the exit. But then his palm fumbled for a small box. The man took out the object and was surprised to notice that it was perfume, which he intended to give and forgot. Sam turned to his wife and handed her the box and said, "It's been a long time since I gave you a gift. Let this perfume be a parting gift from me. I beg you, do not hold a grudge against me. I wish you in the future to meet a worthy man who will love you with all his heart and never hurt. Don't worry about the money. If I owe you, I will give it to you. I will warn you right away that perhaps the next payment can be a little delayed, because I will still have to find a job. After all, you said yourself that I'm not working for Mark anymore. Now I'm leaving and I wish you happiness." Sam picked up his bag and left the apartment, never to come back here again. He walked for a while and then turned into a public garden, where he sat down on a bench and thought about what he should do next. Sam did not want to stay in New York, as he realized that it was a really expensive city. The man pondered for a while as his sister called him. Sam picked up the phone and greeted Nancy, and she quickly spoke to Sam. "Come to the village at once. Mom had a heart attack. She has been taken to the district hospital. How is she doing? What do the doctors say? We won't know until tomorrow." "What kind of day is this?" "Only trouble," the man said glumly, and immediately added that he was going to the train station to buy a ticket for the nearest flight. The man only wanted to disconnect the connection when Nancy spoke again. "What happened there?" "What kind of trouble?" "I'm fine." Without thinking, I said, and after these words, I immediately disconnected the connection. Sam now realized that as soon as he appeared at home, his sister would not give up on him until she knew the whole truth. A day later, Sam was already in the village. He learned from Nancy that his mother was better and could be visited. The man went to see his mother. The very next day after his arrival, Sam bought some fruit and soon went to the hospital. He came to the post where a small girl was sitting and writing something in a journal. The man walked to get her attention, and then he heard from the nurse, "You don't want to spread infection around here. If there's anything you want to ask me, I'm listening. And I'm not used to talking to a man who's busy doing something else. Why don't you at least look at me? Man, what do you want?" "Talk fast, because I have a lot of things to do," the girl said and looked at the visitor point blank. Sam looked at the nurse and immediately mentally thought it is necessary to be born so scary. But aloud, the man said that he wanted to visit his mother, and he needed to know the room number. The girl, having heard Sam's surname, immediately told him in which ward the elderly woman was lying. The visitor thanked the medic and went further down the corridor. Sam stayed with his mother for about an hour and then left the ward. The man was walking towards the exit when the same nurse he had seen at the post came out to meet him. Sam thought again how unlucky this girl was with her looks, and then he noticed that she was limping on her right leg. The man mentally and thought that such things happen in life. Not only that this girl was born, not pretty, but also the Lord awarded her with a limp. Soon Sam came to the village. His sister immediately came to him and began to ask about the trouble he had in New York. The man refused for a long time, but Nancy was adamant and demanded to tell her everything. Sam couldn't stand it and said in his heart, "You are a pain in the ass, my sister, as only your husband tolerates you. If my niece will go to you in character, then definitely can communicate with you will be only on the phone and only 10 minutes. Don't leave. Tell me what happened. After all, know that I will not leave until I know the truth." Sam sighed sorrowfully and told his sister about his marriage and where he got the money for Kelly's surgery. The man also informed her of his infidelity. Nancy listened to all this news with her eyes wide open, and as soon as her brother fell silent, she slammed her fist into his chest and spoke angrily. "You married this Adriana just to get money out of her. How could you do that? In fact, you promised me that you wouldn't get your finances that way. How could you even keep this from me? Stop raging. It's all in the past. I'm gonna live here with you guys now. I don't know if we're all living together though. Of course we will. When you get a job, we'll all work together to pay off that debt to your ex-wife. All that matters now is that Mom gets better." "You're right about that, Nancy." Sam's mom was in the hospital for 10 days. The man visited the old woman every other day and often met a nurse who was still limping. When Sam saw the girl, he always saw her as an angry nurse. The man himself did not understand why he thought so about her. And before the mother was discharged, he asked her a question. "There's a nurse who works here who has a limp. I think she's angry because it's written all over her face. You shouldn't say she's mean. She's a kind soul. She will find for each patient affectionate words, and no stranger to help nurse to change diapers, seriously ill people. And also when she has a night shift, and she reads books to us. I didn't expect you to praise her so much. After the man's mother was discharged, Sam went to the city and got a job at a factory in a specialty. He decided that he would live his life as he could and no longer looked for rich women. Sam no longer dreamed of a life where he could go to expensive restaurants and drive a cool foreign car. 2 months passed as the man worked at the factory, and one day he was returning home to his rented apartment. After a day of labor, as he noticed a girl who was limping, she took a couple of steps and suddenly fell on the path, which was covered with ice. And at the same moment, 2 guys laughed nearby, and one of them said not only that it was scary, and how the earth bears such persons. Sam was well aware that this phrase was heard by the girl. The man immediately jumped up to the guys and asked them to apologize to the girl. The young men wanted to answer the glory rudely at first, but seeing his angry look, quietly said that they apologize. And after these words, the boys hurried away. Meanwhile, Sam gave his hand to the girl and asked her softly, "Are you not mistaken?" "No, but you shouldn't have stood up for you like that. I'm used to such words long ago." And then the girl looked at her savior and said in surprise, "I know you visited your mother in the hospital. I wonder if you memorize all the visitors as you do me. If I'm not mistaken, your name is Helen." "No mistake. Not all the visitors. It's just that you look like a subject." "Well, I won't keep you. I should get home. Why are you running away from me so fast? Let me walk you out so you don't run into guys like that. You gotta be kidding me. Thanks for your help, but you don't have to walk me home. I'd just like to talk to you, but I can see you're being belligerent toward me. All because you think I'm cute. What's the resonance? But it turns out being beautiful isn't always a good thing in life. So what are we gonna talk about?" "I'll find things to talk about," the man said happily. He didn't know, but he really wanted to talk to this girl. The couple walked down the street for a while and talked peacefully. Sam mostly told about his childhood, how he used to joke about his sister. Helen listened to him. I laughed heartily. Soon the young people approached the house, and the girl announced that they were there. The man sighed disappointedly and immediately offered the new acquaintance another walk. However, the girl refused, saying that she had more important things to do. Sam once again sighed disappointedly and said, "Well, at least give me your phone number to call you and invite you for a walk. I have a free day, will be on Thursday. We'll call in the morning and talk about it." And soon the girl left, and the man still stood for some time and thought a new acquaintance. Sam was at this time ready to do anything, only if Helen would be with him a little longer. The man glanced at the house and then turned and went to his room. A few days passed, and it was Thursday. Sam dialed Helen's number on his lunch hour and greeted the girl and then asked her if she would be willing to go out with him today. The girl said yes and told him where to come over and what time. Sam walked to the date, visibly nervous. The man came to the meeting as much as half an hour before the appointed time. He stood and moved from foot to foot, looking for Helen. And soon Sam saw the limping girl. He hurried to meet her, and as soon as he was near her, he took out a small bouquet of flowers from his pocket and handed it to Helen. The girl embarrassedly said, "We'll freeze them now. It's not the month of May. I suggest that we go to the cafe and warm ourselves, and we will not let the flowers die. It's a waste of money. I don't think you're a millionaire's son to spend money left and right. Let's go to my place. Grandma will enjoy the company of a handsome man. That's the thing. But let's stop by the store so I can at least buy a cake, because it's uncomfortable to go empty-handed. You'll be holding flowers, so present them to my grandmother. But I gave you the bouquet." "Again an inconsistency, it comes out," said Sam embarrassedly. The girl laughed in response and said that if they continued to argue, she would change her mind about taking the man to her house. After these words of Alina, the interlocutor raised his hands above his head and said that he was giving up. The couple soon continued on their way. Sam asked the interlocutor to tell about herself. Helen looked at the man and said that she was 24 years old and lived with her grandmother. She also said that last year she entered the medical school on a correspondence course. The girl said that in the future she dreams of becoming a doctor orthopedist. Helen did not tell anything about her father, and about her mother said that she lives in another city. Soon the man was already sitting at the girl's house and talking nicely with the elderly woman. And Helen was setting the table to treat the guest with tea and cakes that the grandmother had baked today. Nickel. After that, Sam began to call the girl often, as well as to visit her. The man felt that he was incredibly attracted to Helen. He wanted to protect her and see her as often as possible. Nickel saw that the man liked her granddaughter. And once, when Sam came to visit, and the girl was not at home at that moment, the old woman turned to him. "Are you serious about hitting on my granddaughter, or do you want to stroke your ego? There are plenty of available girls for that. And if we are having a serious conversation right now, I can tell you that Helen, I have fallen in love. I've never had feelings like this before. And would you believe me, I've been with a lot of women. If you're in love, why did you ask her to marry you? You know, I think I might do that tonight. When Helen gets here, I'll tell her about it. But I'll tell you right away, I'm not going to give you the Goldilocks. You know all about me. But will she agree to marry me? Well, you ask her now. Helen just got home. Idea groom, meet your beloved." Sam happily nodded to the older woman and followed her into the hallway. The couple chatted privately for a while, and then the young people made their way into the hall. Nickel looked at her granddaughter and realized that the girl had accepted the man's proposal. The old lady smiled at the couple and proposed to celebrate the engagement. After these words of the old woman, everyone in the room laughed. Soon the trio sat down at the table. Helen poured tea for everyone and put a vase with jam and dried fruit on the table. The girl watched with delight as the chosen one took a few sips and looked at her. And then he looked at Nicole and softly said, "My future spouse is the most beautiful in this world. And if anyone wants to dispute that, they'll have to deal with my fist. Your future wife is not only beautiful, she's also rich. I know I didn't tell you that, Helen, and I was right to. But there's no point in keeping it a secret now. Her mom lives abroad and has a business there. She offered her daughter to move in with her, but Anishka refused. She said she wanted to do everything on her own, which in fact she does. However, her mother transfers her money every month, which has been accumulating for years, and now there is a very decent amount. You'll have enough for a wedding and a trip, and even to start your own business if you want." After these words, Sam stood up, walked over to Helen, hugged her tenderly, and said to Nicole, "To hell with money. Money isn't what makes you happy. I found my diamond in Helen, and I don't need anything else, but only in the future. A couple of screaming kids, to call us daddy and mommy."
Subscribe and click the bell.
Nancy left the school. Peter walked beside her, as usual. "But why are you leaving today?" "No, I guess I can't." Clara said she had to weed the potatoes. Nancy sighed. Ever since her father had brought that woman into the house, Nancy's life had been a living hell. Clara had looked for gain everywhere, and of course she had found it. Father worked in town, a week there, a week at home. The week he was home was easier, of course. But when he was away, it started. The first thing, the stepmother decided to expand the vegetable garden and increase the number of livestock in the yard. Dad supported all her ideas, and Clara said, "As soon as the farm starts to bring profit, you can quit this job and work at home." "It would be good, Clara. I miss you and my daughter." The woman was pleased. She smiled. While Daddy was away, all the hard work was on Nancy's shoulders, but she didn't complain. She really wanted Daddy home too. Clara went to the market every 3 days. Nancy didn't know how much money she made there. But it must have been pretty good, because after a year, Daddy quit. The girl thought things would get easier, but it turned out to be much worse. On the first day, when the father was free at dinner, Clara said, "From tomorrow, we start building a new one. I've already ordered the material." "Clara, why is this stable only 5 years old?" "Well, this one's not going anywhere. There'll be an extra one." Father just sighed. Lately, they had only numbers instead of love in their eyes. Then he built a stable and a barn and a chicken coop. But Nancy began to notice that her father smelled more and more of drink. And there was such sadness in his eyes. Clara shouted she could warm him with a broom, but he kept drinking milk. Very soon all the hard work again fell on her shoulders because her father often could not do anything. The village grandmothers sighed. Such a man was ruined by his rubles, not a woman. Clara knew exactly what was being said about her. She argued and fought, almost throwing herself at everyone. Pretty soon people in the village didn't even say hello to her, and she didn't care, to tell the truth. She didn't take anything from anyone. She earned everything herself. All the alkies and idlers, let them bite their elbows in silent envy. Peter, you're not going to win a gold medal anyway. Nancy waved her hand. Why do I need it, this gold medal? To put it in my room and admire it. You wanted to go to college, didn't you? Who's going to let me go to that institute? My father on his hands and knees? Every day on the farm is huge. She sighed. Peter looked at her in amazement. Nancy, what's wrong with you? You're out of your mind. You're the best in the whole school. You wanted to be. How could I? Nancy looked up at the sky. It's okay, I'll get over it. Most people do. They get married, have kids, take care of the household. It's a different time. Peter, leave me alone. It is better to tell your grandfather how normal limping and a little so good. Nancy smiled. A week ago, a terrible event shook the village. It had long been said that the wolves were coming too close to the village, they said. But it's no use. They had a forester. If you could catch him sober once a week. They hoped that nothing terrible would happen. They were wrong. One night the wolves swarmed the neighbor's fence and tried to take the dog off the chain. The owner jumped out. Neighbors. And Peter's grandfather, who is 100 years old. One didn't hesitate. Immediately grabbed the barrel from the wall. Yes, also in the yard to grab who grabbed? But only age gave its own way. The grandfather got confused and swung at the wolf in his leg. It's good that it only hit the soft part. But the rumble scared the wolves too. As they say, it was both a laugh and a sin. The grandfathers treated the whole village. Peter had only his mother and grandfather, so there wasn't much wealth. Everyone carried something tasty or useful to Grandpa Nick, who sacrificed himself for the sake of the rescue. Only one family was left out. And that, of course, was Nancy's family. Clara immediately said, well, if a man is a fool, it's forever. There's nothing to jump around like a young man at that age. Papa was as usual under the influence, and Nancy wouldn't even try. She was never listened to at all. You told your grandfather to correct himself. Listen, Nancy, which field are you going to weed? The farthest one, the one behind the village. So let me come and help you. Don't, Peter. No need. Don't you have your own things to do? Nancy said she realized that Peter would come and help, and they could spend the saved time on the river. And it made her so happy. And it appeared that you were all with Peter and 3 horses. You'll be on the street in no time. If you were a person, you'd be a country bumpkin nobody needs. Wouldn't you look at normal people? Nancy didn't even pay attention. That's how her stepmother always greeted her. Not Peter, not Peter, not Peter, not Peter, not Peter, not Peter. She'd think of something else. No matter how Nancy arrived, she'd be bombarded with accusations from the very doorstep. What she's hiding? Your daddy dragged your drunkard around on his back. Your back is gnawing at you too. Don't even think about it. Don't forget you're on potatoes. I remember about your potatoes. Nancy couldn't hold back any longer. She wanted to shout and stomp her feet, but she realized that the task would then fall on her head even more. Why is she mine? Are you guys eating with your daddy? Or maybe you eat air? Clara put her hands to her sides. Nancy realized that a scandal was about to break out, and it would look like a one-actor play, so it wouldn't come to that. She decided to take no offense and go straight to the field. Quickly, she changed her clothes. As Clara positioned herself and stepped out the door, she was already on her 3rd furrow. When did Peter show up? Not alone, but with his grandfather. Good health and truth. Hello, Grandpa Nick. How's your leg? What's it going to do? She walks more out of habit than anything else. She's long forgotten what pain is. Why is it walking and not like this in this heat? And what's the use of weeding it? We'll be digging soon enough. Nancy sighed. Grandfather grinned into his mustache. He was a wise, kind man. I know, don't say anything. Yours in the store is already scandalized by the wrong color of sugar. She needs yellow, and the store is white. Peter laughed. What's the difference? I thought yellow was bad. Well, I don't know. It is kind of considered to be sweeter. Grandfather sat down on the grass, looked at his grandson. Why don't you get up and go help the girl? Peter stood next to her, and they started pulling the grass with fury. Soon I smelled smoke. Grandpa had built a fire at the edge of the field. Dropped some potatoes from behind his sinuses, took out cucumbers, tomatoes. When there was less than half left, he called them over for a snack. Nancy had never had such a good meal. Obviously, of course, it's just potatoes. But how delicious. In general, in the company of Grandpa Nick and Peter, it was so homely, so nice and quiet. I knew your stepmother when she was a girl. That's why she doesn't like me so much. She's from a good family. Her father's a hard worker. Her mother killed his wife, and she's already driven one man to his grave. But she didn't get anything from the big farm. Her sister came to the funeral, and it turned out that the house and everything that belonged to it belonged to her. Only that Pebbles didn't tell her about it. In general, the stepmother lost everything. Then she stuck to your father. Nancy stretched out thoughtfully. I wonder if Dad knows about it. Is Dad so in love with Clara that he doesn't notice? Yeah, there was a time when they were dating. Didn't anyone say anything to him? I can't help you there. I haven't seen your father in a while. And if I do, he's in no condition to talk. He drinks a lot. This guy was drinking at her place. Nancy at night, when she was already asleep, decided that as soon as she finished school, she'd go somewhere and take her father with her. He'd quit drinking, she'd talk him into it, and they'd get along. They'll be fine. And this one's got to run this place by herself. And winter was a little easier. Didn't have to be in the field, didn't have to be in the bed. Nancy even went for a walk once in a while. Peter, like a faithful guardian, was always there. To be honest, sometimes I'd like to be without him. But somewhere he'd take offense. In general, Nancy had more and more often thought that she should just marry well. Molly is only 2 years older than Nancy, and she got married in the next big village. Her husband, though older, treats her like a porcelain doll. Molly's mother told me that he takes her to school in the city by car and takes her back. Not only does he have a car, but he doesn't let her study. If Nancy could find such a man, she'd marry him right away. Is Peter going to find a new subject in her life? On the other hand, Nancy realized that such luck was not common. Spring had come. Graduation exams loomed ahead. And what? And Nancy didn't know yet. There was no talking to her father about it, but her stepmother, much less what she would tell her. And also, understandably, well, something had to be done. So Nancy made up her mind, choosing a day when the stepmother was in a pretty decent mood. Nancy sat down at the table in front of her. Clara. Yes, she took a break from her calculations and looked at Nancy. That I should talk to you. The stepmother put aside the papers. Her face was serious. Well, let's have a talk. Nancy could see that the stepmother knew exactly what the conversation was about. Graduation is coming up. We have to apply somewhere. The stepmother grinned, not very friendly. We're somewhere else? But to the place where I'm going to study. The stepmother grinned and said, Will your daddy, or will I be someone else's aunt? You realize that my relative is of no use to me. Nancy blushed. Of course, there was logic in her stepmother's words. Her father had long since given her the finger. But what should Nancy do? You realize, Nancy, if you don't help with the chores, I'll have to hire a man. And that's a lot of money. So, no matter how hard I try, I can't give you any money. Anyway, if you're washing your hands of it, there's no reason for you to come here. So if you decide to go to school, I'll sell my family. You can forget it. Nancy almost cried. She'd been expecting something like that. But it was still a shame. But everybody goes to school. You're not everybody. You're in a completely different situation. Am I wrong? That's it. I think I've explained everything clearly to you. The stepmother got up and walked out. Nancy burst into tears. It's exactly as she thought. She's going to rot in this village like this. For a few days, Nancy walked on her own, not her mood. She even decided she wouldn't go to the prom. Peter was so annoying that there was no energy. One day she came from school, sat on a bench in the yard, and sat in the barn. She heard a rustle. Strange. Stepmother left for the market in the morning. How'd she even get her driver's license? She bought herself a car, an old Jeep. She's been going into town a lot more often. Who's there? The girl carefully stood up, wanted to go to the door, but it opened by itself. Her father's head appeared. He was very drunk, and it was immediately obvious. Nancy sighed bitterly. Nancy doesn't have this one. And then Nancy was so angry that tears sprang from her eyes. What's it to you? Who's here? Who isn't? You can't see anybody anyway. You don't care about anyone but yourself. Dad, why do you hate me so much? Giving me to someone else's aunt. You're the one who's watering your eyes. Nancy, what are you talking about? What's the matter? I don't know what you're talking about. What am I saying? You know that everyone will go to school after high school. Your daughter will continue to clean cow's dung because Grandma doesn't want to do anything. He's more interested in drinking every day than thinking about his daughter. Nancy, wait, and don't cry. But the girl had already run into the house. Kevin sat down on the bench where his daughter had just sat and stared at himself. What a headache from all sorts of thoughts. The man raised his head and saw Grandfather Nick at the gate. Healthy. Grandpa's sick. I don't understand anything. Things are happening at home. Kevin waved his hand. No, she's gone to town. Grandpa Nick went into the yard, sat down next to her. What are you doing, Kevin? Peter says your girl won't let you go to school. Why not? But it's not for 1 year. You have to support her. Don't we have money? Maybe yours does. But I don't think you do. So what's the deal? Kevin lowered his head. He'd been tempted to come out of the barn just now. Nancy had heard her father and Clara talking in the kitchen that evening, talking rather than yelling and arguing. It was very strange because in the last couple years, normally they hadn't communicated at all. The girl tried to listen, but she couldn't make out the words. Half an hour later, Clara stopped by. Nancy, an idea how about us? The girl came out at the table, sat her father. He was gloomy. Clara pointed to a chair. Sit down. Nancy sat down. She looked at her father in amazement. Apparently, he was sober. Nothing to say. Stepmother. Nancy, your daddy swears he won't take another drop in his mouth. And he says he'll work 3 jobs just to keep you in school. And I can agree to that. But on one condition, if your dad gets drunk once, you drop out of school. Nancy agreed to everything. She realized that the most important thing was to get out of here. Then she'd figure it out. Maybe get a job, maybe something else. Nancy was already dreaming of a very different life. She didn't really know what it was like to live in the city. And to be honest, she didn't know what she'd do there all day long. But she wanted it so badly. A few years went by. Nancy had just gotten her paramedic's diploma and was about to get a job. She had a young man she planned to marry in the future. True, he wasn't a star, but he was a city boy. And he had an apartment, but he lived with his mom. But that didn't frighten Nancy. She was determined to be a good daughter-in-law. She had little contact with her father and stepmother. She went to see them once every 6 months and tried to get away as soon as possible. Nancy, there's an emergency phone call for you. The door of the dorm room opened, and Nancy saw the janitor on the doorstep. It was strange. Usually she was very reluctant to have any of the residents on the phone. Nancy walked out of the room. First she walked, then she ran. The receiver was on the table. Hello. Hello, Nancy. It's Andrew. Yes, Andrew, I'm listening. Here's the thing. Well, Nancy's dead. Yours were going to the city. Something apparently happened to the car. They flew into the ditch. There's a tree there. You need to solve everything here. Nancy dropped the phone, then slowly settled on the floor. How come? How come? Someone handed her some water. Someone helped her into a chair. Nancy sat at the head of the table. Some of the neighbors gathered around the table. What grief is not old? He would have lived and lived. Yes, if he took a man to his senses. Even Garika began to restrain her, they said, and she somehow became calmer when he stopped drinking. A woman needs a real man, not a body. Nancy heard through the fog, but only one thing was going through her head. What to do now? When everyone had gone, Nancy began to wash the dishes. There was a knock at the door. Who was it? It was Peter. Nancy hadn't seen him in a long time. Probably the last time. How did he get into the army? Hello on the walls. Hello, Peter. I don't recognize you. And it was true. Peter had matured from a tall and gangly man to a sturdy tall man. Peter, where are you from? Yes, I came to see my mother. She said you're here to drop by. Peter sat down at the table and looked around the kitchen. Well, it's you. I'm sorry for your loss. Thanks, Peter. She finished cleaning up, looked at him. Would you like a drink? Let's sit and remember Uncle Kolya. And his Clara, too. He was a man after all. Nancy put some sandwiches, a bottle, and a shot glass in front of him. Don't you have one for yourself? I don't drink. You can't drink. They're not strangers to you. Have a little drink and you'll feel better. I'm telling you. Nancy sighed and put down another shot. She tried it with the girls in the dorm, but it hadn't worked. Nancy, it didn't taste good. Nasty. You haven't smelled it. Drink as much as you can in one gulp and don't breathe. Pick a snack or some compote. Nancy did just that. The aftertaste wasn't great, of course, but it wasn't as bad as before. And after a few minutes, she felt her muscles relaxing, getting lighter. So let's do it again. Come on. Nancy woke up with a wild headache. She had absolutely no memory of going to bed last night. I turned my head and was amazed. Peter was sleeping next to me. Shit. What a funeral. She was out of her mind. The most frustrating thing was that she couldn't remember anything. Peter. He moved and turned to her. Nancy, but you're a fire. I tell you, you should drink more often. Peter, get out. Now before the village gets up and you what? I'm an adult. Go away. I'm begging you. Nancy didn't know what to say, so she blurted it out. I have a fiancé. Peter's eyes narrowed. A fiancé, you say? Why'd you jump into bed with me? Yeah, I'm the one who jumped into your bed. All right, I'll be right out. Peter got off in 2 seconds and walked out. Nancy cried. She didn't want to. She didn't want anything. After her childhood friend left, there was a lingering residue on her soul, as if she had wronged someone undeservedly. In the morning, Nancy went to the cemetery, sat on the fresh graves for a while. She cried, and on her way back, she saw Nick's grandfather. He was obviously waiting for her. Hello, Nancy. Hello, Grandpa Nick. I wanted to talk to you, Nancy. The girl blushed thickly. Old man, I haven't slept at all. Not at all. But I haven't slept today either. You know Peter is mine. I saw how he jumped out of your arms. He's going to town today. Mother's crying, and my heart's breaking too. He came here and promised to stay. What happened? Nancy. What could Nancy say to him? She thought that if she told him everything, all her dreams of the city, of city life, would come to an end. She loved the country, of course, but not so much that she couldn't even try to leave. And on the other hand, Peter, he had become such a city girl her suitor was nowhere near him. Grandpa Nick, nothing happened. It was just sitting around. Nancy walked around the old man and down the path. She could feel his gaze burning her back, but she didn't turn around. 3 days later, she was leaving. She'd seen a glimpse of Peter still here, so she calmed down. Well, good, as much as she doesn't like him. And to connect her life with him she does not want. She knows him. Counting from diapers, what can be interesting in him? She's already packed her things and checked everything. What's off? What's not? Behind the household while the neighbor watches. Nancy promised to give her a young chick for it. The neighbor, the mother of the Molly that Nancy had once invited, sighed. Don't you worry, Nancy. I'll review everything. I'll do everything. Ninka will help. For the tree. Thank you. It's not easy for us right now. Molly is Molly here, Nancy. Where would she be? She was married. You said it was fine. Aunt Kathy waved her hand. What was I supposed to say? That I got married over the summer, and there wasn't a day that went by without a beating. But I'd put up with it as long as I could. Then I had the baby in my arms. We barely fought off the bastard. Nancy was confused. Molly's life had been an example to her for so many years, and now this revelation. The neighbor left. Nancy sat down in the driveway. Nancy, that was Peter's voice. Is something wrong? She ran outside. Peter was almost to the door. Nancy, Grandpa's sick. Help me. It's the paramedic. Our paramedic's on his third day. Nancy rushed into the house, grabbed the first aid kit she always carried in her bag. Didn't even lock the door, so she ran. Peter was running beside her, and he said he'd been pale in the morning, breathing hard. And at lunchtime, he got up from the couch and sat down again. I asked him what, and he just waved me off. He's not feeling well at all now. Nancy, help me. She stopped abruptly, so much so that Peter ran into her. Because I'll do what I can, but you have to understand. How old is Nick 94's grandfather? He sighed like he was going to cry. Nancy silently skipped onward. Grandfather was very ill indeed. He was lying on the sofa and breathing with difficulty. Nancy immediately realized that he had a heart attack. She crouched down beside him and rummaged through the medicine cabinet. An hour later, he was feeling much better. Grandpa Nick, do you need to go to the hospital? I'm not going anywhere. That's all I need. I'll die at home. Grandpa said indignantly, What do you mean, die? Get those thoughts out of your head. Grandfather grinned, looked at his grandson. Do you think that at 94 life only begins? No, grandson. Everyone has his own destiny. And it's foolish to try to cheat fate. I've had a good life. Guys, everybody who's turning 70 has already cleaned up. Nancy and Peter went outside. Peter, I don't know what to do. To be honest, Grandpa Nick's condition is not good. He's not going to the hospital. I know my grandfather. Nancy looked at Peter, realized that he really cared about his grandfather. But you say the paramedic is drinking, and I have to go. Go. Peter wouldn't look at her. Peter, but I really need to go to my new job. No one's waiting for me. It's not like I'm holding you back, and I understand. Thanks for coming to see you off. Did Nancy shake her head? No, you don't have to. Go on then. There's a bus in an hour. Nancy walked down the street. After a minute, she turned around. But Peter was no longer in the yard. For the first time in her life, she wanted to stay in the village. She walked around the yard, figured out the dog behind his ear, then sat down on the bench. What am I going to do? She sat like that, looking at her watch. The bus had long gone. And what will she go tomorrow? Talk to Andrew, tell him what prospects in the village. And there's no problem with money here. What a farm she has. Nancy didn't know whether she was doing the right thing or not, but she had to decide something. She went to bed with a heavy heart. In the morning, she decided to go. What to do here? When the bus came and she got on, she saw Peter running to his house. Then he immediately closed his eyes again. Grandpa Nick had died. She learned about it from Sveta the girl, from their village I met by chance in town. Nancy tried not to blame herself. She understood perfectly well that Nick's grandfather would never get out. But she realized what Peter thought of her. A week later, she went to Andrew. Strange that he hadn't shown up in the meantime. His mom opened the door. Nancy hadn't seen her yet. And to be honest, she kind of scared her right off. Hello, Andrew's home. Who are you? Not Nancy. Nancy. The girl tried to smile. You shouldn't come here anymore, Nancy. Andrew met a nice city girl. Well-mannered. She was taken aback. What do you mean, met? He knew I was going to the funeral. But he knew what? Tell me what you can give to your family. You don't have a job yet. No parents to help now. Nancy even began to gasp for air at such accusations, then spoke out. Well, yes, I guess it's nothing you dream of, is it? But only if the house I've got is worth more than your apartment or the farm, for which I got a very large sum. But you don't care about that now, do you? Goodbye. She ran downstairs. Tears rolled from her eyes. The steps merged into one. That same day, Nancy threw all her things into a suitcase and left for the village. Yes, fuck it all. People live in the village, especially with her profession. In the evening, someone knocked quietly on the door. Yes, there was Andrew. Hello, Nancy. She threw herself on the back of a chair and looked at him with interest. God, what did she see in him? He was a skinny, long guy with glasses. Pale hands, pale forehead, sweating all the time. She's like her mom said, "You're letting out a rich bride." "Why would you do that?" "I just missed you." "I missed you." "That's good." "I said some things to your mom in there." "It's okay. My mom's not a very good character. You'll have to forgive her for not talking to her so nicely the whole time they knew each other." Nancy suddenly burst into tears. It's a shame. Is she so ugly that you can love her for her inheritance? "Andrew, you see, what's the matter?" Nancy looked at Andrew, who was sitting on her bed, and grinned. "You're a very good man. Do I need you that much? I inherited a lot of debt." "Andrew from the villages." "What debts?" Nancy's getting a little carried away. "What kind of debts?" "Strange, that's strange." "Andrew, it's nothing. I just remembered I have to go somewhere urgently. I'll meet you tomorrow." He quickly sneezed on those slits and vanished. There's no other name for it because Andrew never stonked. In fact, he looked more like a ghost. Nancy threw herself on the bed and burst into tears at what was wrong with her. What? She'd gotten a pretty good education, so she fell asleep and thought. In the morning, I packed all my things. She got on the bus. She went out and looked around. But isn't it beautiful? At the edge of the village, construction was boiling. She heard they were building a new club. It will be called the House of Culture. You can live anywhere, and the saying, "Where you're born, there you are." You shouldn't forget it at all. She entered her yard and left the yard with new eyes. That's good. There's the house. I haven't seen Peter Nancy. She'd walked by their house a few times on purpose, but he either didn't see it or didn't want to come out. Probably the latter. It's all right. He'll get over it. He'll understand, and they'll make up. Nancy realized more and more every day that she wanted to be with him, wanted to live together, to have children together. 2 weeks passed. During that time, Nancy sold most of the farm, keeping some for herself, of course. She also became very good friends with Molly. They hadn't talked much before because Molly was older. Nancy didn't recognize her at first. Skinny, kind of brooding, but then she got over it. They got to talking. One night when they were having tea, Molly asked Nancy, "What do you think of the job?" "I don't know. I'll have to go to the headmaster, see what he suggests, or the nurse's station." "There's a paramedic." Molly laughed too. "What kind of paramedic is he?" "Well, you know, it's embarrassing to put a man down like that. Stop thinking about people. They're alcoholics about it." All night Nancy thought about it. It's true, nobody thinks about her. Why should she? Especially since Molly's right not to. In the morning, she picked up her papers and headed for the office. Andrew used to be called chairman, but now he's a director. What difference does it make, really? He was the one who dealt with all matters in the village. "Oh, Nancy, they told me you were back, and I thought it was for good. Or is it business?" "Business, Andrew. It's about the principal's job. Rubbing my hands together. So you're back for good, not running away." "Yeah, it's not in the plans yet." He looked at her real hard. "See, I'm gonna hire you now. You later. Come on, Andrew. I'm not 18, I said I'll be here." After an hour of negotiation, when the acting paramedic was called in and sprayed around with fumes of booze, he thanked her profusely for getting rid of such a responsibility. Nancy received the keys to the nurse's station in her hands. She stared at them in amazement, but she was a real person now. Straight from the office, she went to the nurse's station. The grass is higher than the fence. The path is narrow to the door. Yeah, the old paramedic didn't bother much. Nancy's had enough and rolled up his sleeves. Now she can do what she really needs to do. No one showed up at the nurse's station. At least 2 weeks. Dust lay everywhere. The few instruments that had been messed with piled on a table. An hour or two later, the door opened and Nancy heard Molly's voice. "Nancy, are you here?" Nancy looked out here. "Where else would I be?" Molly laughed. "Oh, I can't. Have you seen yourself?" Nancy wiped the streaks on her cheek, fixed her hair, which immediately jumped back into free flight. "Come on, neighbor, help me out instead of laughing. It's a two-handed job." The work went faster. By evening, the insides of the medical center were shining and glistening. They walked out. Nancy sighed tiredly. "I'll have to put all this beauty out tomorrow myself. Listen, ask your mother if you can plant any more flowers now. I will. We'll have to ask the men to mow. I don't want to ask anyone myself. In the morning, Nancy got up early, gave her a cow, put her out in the herd. She was immediately surrounded by the village women. Nancy, is it true you are a paramedic now? She smiled, isn't it true? And that, every day you will work and even come like that. Today she put on more orders. And from tomorrow, you're welcome. Just think, just a little while ago you were a girl running around. And now you're a doctor. It's crazy. Nancy, it was nice to hear all that. She was starting to feel proud of herself. I mean, what did she need in that town? She's got everything. A big house, good money, a job. And if she works hard, she'll get a lot of respect. And then maybe Peter will hear about what she's like. And he'll come to her. Nancy realized that they were adults, that they could talk. But she knew Peter well. He wouldn't be the first to talk. On the first day that the nurse's station was to be open, Nancy, before she reached it, saw a crowd of old ladies outside. She realized perfectly well that today she would have an exam. There was no other way to call it. And of course, everyone got sick all at once. Molly, who was walking next to her, she was taking her daughter to kindergarten when she whistled. Well, friend, you can't get it all sorted out by tomorrow. Nancy smiled. It's okay, I can handle it. By lunchtime, the line had visibly settled down. Nancy could feel her stomach rumbling. Her patient heard it. When did the appointment end? She came out and said, Taxi. Our doctor's tummy's already rumbling. Give me some tea at least, girls. Everyone agreed without complaint, for which Nancy was very grateful to him. Half an hour later, she looked out into the corridor a little more rested and cheerful. Who was next for health? By evening, all the old ladies went home satisfied. The director dropped by and asked if he needed anything. Nancy, with a nice smile, handed him the list and added that it was very urgent. The principal looked perplexed at the double sheet, which had been and written off on all sides. What is all this stuff anyway? Yup, everything, nothing could be left out. He scratched the back of his head. Didn't I overreact by putting you in Peter's place? Nancy remained silent. Andrew sighed and walked out. She never saw Peter again. Then Molly told her he was working on some city job, felling timber into plots. He only comes home on Saturday to pray, sleep, and then go back to the woods. But not the same ones at his house. It's been 2 months since Nancy started work. The grandmothers were happy. That's the main thing. At that age, they don't want medicine so much as attention. Of course, there have been younger people who've come in. Nancy had 2 of them rushed to the hospital. One man with appendicitis, the other with kidney pain. I mean, Nancy couldn't be 100% sure without tests. But it looked a lot like stones. As it turns out, she wasn't wrong. The hospital said a couple more days, and there'd be no one left to treat. It was the end of a normal workday. The weather was bad outside, so there weren't many patients today. Nancy was just about to close the medicine safe when the door slammed. And someone yelled, "Doctor is doctor." Nancy jumped out of the office. Peter, Nancy almost fainted. Peter was in such a state. "Daughter here." One of the men looked at her fearfully. "Here on the couch." Peter was put on the couch. "Somebody get Frank. If he's sober, get him over here." The younger one nodded and ran out of the infirmary. Nancy, on the other hand, examined Peter several times on the head. Looks like the bones are intact. The wounds are superficial. His arm is hanging by a whip from his shoulder. Look, we need to avoid the city. If possible, the forest is the only place where our men can make money. If this gets out, we'll lose all our jobs. Are you crazy? A man can die. I understand. I'm saying if it's possible. Lucky for Nancy, Frank was sober. He walked briskly into the office. He glanced at Peter. What do we do? Let's take it one step at a time. Let's start with the head. An hour later, Nancy put in the last stitch. Frank smiled approvingly. Good job. Peter opened his eyes. Nancy, lying quietly still. He smiled again and closed his eyes. The arm turned out to be dislocated. Frank helped. Peter screamed and finally passed out. Nothing, just a little soreness, that's all. Peter's mother literally flew into the nurse's station. She threw herself at the man who asked not to send Peter to town, that he was satisfied. Sitting there, "You'd better fall through the ground, Gad." The man turned away from her clapping and said nothing. As Frank explained, he was the cheerleader. "Calm down, Vanessa. Like you don't know your son. He's the first to go everywhere." A woman looked in on her. "Nancy, don't worry. Everything will be fine. I'll be here with him till morning. I'll stay with you too. You don't have to. I'll be fine." Peter woke up in the middle of the night, looked around the nurse's station with a hazy gaze, stopped it on Nancy and Nancy sleeping at the table. Dropped off. "Peter, how are you feeling?" "Who knows? Not so good. You're very lucky. You only took the glancing blow to the head." "Yeah, lucky. So lucky." Peter was transported home in the morning. Vanessa, his mother, thanked Nancy for a long time. Then she said, "Nancy, you're coming." "Well, of course, I'll come back every day to change the bandages. Treat them. Then the live ones have to come off." Nancy ran to Peter's house every day. Except the easier Peter got on him, the gloomier he looked. One day he said to Nancy, "You can go no more, Peter, you don't have to." She realized he wasn't talking at all about her looking after him as a doctor, but specifically about their relationship. Tears came to her eyes. "You're sure?" "I'm sure of it. You said yourself you wanted to marry a city man, so I'll stay out of the way." Nancy wanted to say something, but Peter beat her to it. "Anyway, I'm getting married soon. I got a fiancé." Nancy ran out of the house like a scalded man. All the way home, she ran and cried. She calmed down a little at home. It's just Peter freaking out. Anyone would freak out if they were him. Well, he'll calm down a little, and then they'll talk. Time passed. Peter didn't make any moves. Then she found out he'd gone into the woods again. Nancy was furious. "Oh yeah, to hell with you. William's been after her for a long time. The boy from the neighboring village. She'll get Peter." A day later, William showed up with a chocolate bar. He sat in silence. Then he said tomorrow's a day off to the club. "Some artists are coming. Why don't we go?" He said he was hopelessly sure he'd be turned down. "Shall we go?" William jumped, didn't he? "I'll pick you up at 6 o'clock tomorrow." "All right then." Nancy felt absolutely nothing for William, not disgust, not sympathy. It was just the man and the man and the man. All that was on her mind was Peter. Had he really told her the truth? No way. He was just trying to annoy her. Nancy was sure of it. It was all right, Peter. She could be angry too. Of course, she knew perfectly well that it was all a kindergarten, but she couldn't help it. It wasn't nice to William. She didn't promise anything like that, though. He didn't say anything like that. He invited her to a club. She said yes. William knocked on the door. Minute to minute. Nancy wasn't quite ready yet. "Yeah, come in." He went in, took a look around. It's quite a place. Even bigger on the inside than it was on the outside. Nancy laughed. That doesn't make sense. A house can't be bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. William smiled too and touched the big TV. "Do you have a household too?" "I do." "What's a village without a farm?" "A big one." "No, a couple of piglets, a cow, and some small things." The man looked at her with admiration. "How do you manage?" Nancy laughed. "What's a farm?" Tears. "We used to have a farm. You could drag your feet. You probably know that yourself." "Know how?" "Are you sure? You're not from our village." William sighed. "I am. My mom managed to give birth to me. 4 houses left. No road. So we'd sell the house and move somewhere closer." The man laughed. "Who needs it in that remote area? It's almost 7 kilometers to work." Nancy sat down in front of him. "But we have to do something. Go to Grigory Andreevich." William waved his hand. "Went more than once. You know what he says to me? He says that in my family there is only one worker. It's not profitable to give a house. It's better to give a house to a family with several workers and children." Nancy shook her head. On the one hand, the director could be understood. But on the other hand, what should people do? Half an hour later, they walked towards the club. The crowd was apparently invisible. People from all the neighboring villages came to see the town's artists. She saw Peter. Her heart clenched, and Peter noticed her and immediately disappeared. Nancy turned her head for a long time, but she never saw where he had gone. It wasn't until they were already telling stories she noticed him. Peter came into the hall, holding some girl under his arm. Nancy was so cold. Wasn't he lying? He really does have a fiancée. The mood was ruined. She didn't see who was performing there, what was being sung. She just sat there staring in front of her. She clapped when other people clapped. After the concert, there was dancing. She saw Peter dancing with the same girl. There was only one thought in her head. She had to talk to him. Tell him they are both wrong. Peter pressed the girl very tightly against him, and she cried out. And then Nancy laughed, even felt sick. She grabbed William by the arm and dragged him to the dance floor. I can't dance. Nancy will learn. She clung to him and gradually moved closer to where Peter was dancing. He noticed her for a long look and then pressed his lips to that girl's lips. Nancy had nothing to do, and she immediately kissed William. The guy's eyes popped out of his forehead in surprise, and Peter was gone. How long did Nancy keep looking for him? But she never saw him again. William, I'm going home to the wall. How I think we are. That we have neither we nor we. I'm tired and sleepy. Can I at least walk you home? No, you can't. I just want to be alone. I see. Nancy realized she was being undeservedly rude to the guy, but she couldn't help it. She walked down the street. It was quiet, nice. Occasionally someone's dog would start barking, but they quickly calmed down. Nancy went to her wicket, sighed, pushed it open, and fell into someone's strong arms. What a bird. Peter, did you scare me? It's gonna happen. Peter smelled strongly of booze. Are you drunk? Go home. No way. How am I supposed to go home when you've been tailing me all night on purpose? Peter, what's wrong with you? He held her and wouldn't let go. Then he looked at her. I missed Peter. Nancy got scared. Peter, please go home. He picked her up in his arms and carried her towards Sarajevo. Peter, please don't, please, you don't have to be so loud that a respected paramedic is caught doing something indecent. You and I are about to engage in some very indecent activities. Peter. She resisted as long as she could. But Peter wasn't rude, he was just persistent. Toward morning, Peter silently got up and slipped out of the barn, but never said a word to her. Nancy had so hoped that now they would all finally talk and work things out. She could see that he cared for her. He's just made up his mind about some nonsense for some reason. But it's all right, she'll go and talk to him. And all day Nancy lay on the sofa, decided to give herself a real day off. She slept in, got up in the evening, made a salad, and collapsed in front of the TV again. The next day, almost as soon as Nancy got to work, William showed up, holding a bouquet of asters that grew in every yard, a solemn expression on his face. Nancy, how have I missed you? Nancy cocked an eyebrow in surprise. Then she remembered how she behaved with William, and blushed. It wasn't really his fault. She and Peter had brought him into the game. William's not very nice, but no. But my mom's expecting us for dinner tonight. The principal has authorized the car to be taken after work. Nancy had just gathered the strength to reply as the door swung open. Standing on the doorstep was Molly. Nancy, their Aunt Vanessa bad. Petkin and Mama went quickly. Nancy grabbed her suitcase, threw it to William. You'll see for yourself later. They almost ran the distance to Peter's house. Molly told stories along the way. Peter was leaving in the morning, she and her mother. They had a long argument at the gate. And then Peter ducked into the car and drove off. Where did Nancy go? Where? Where to work? I don't know where, but apparently for a long time, because she had her suitcase with her. Aunt Vanessa sat on the bench with her head bowed. Mom says she thought she was crying, but she just sat there and sat there. So she ran to her, and her eyes were closed and her lips were white. Nancy Chegal was almost on autopilot. How could it be? How could he just pick up and leave? What about her? She refused to believe that Peter had run away again. Well, it can't go on like this forever. Aunt Vanessa really wasn't well. She tried to say something, but Nancy could already see that one side of her face was twisted. She gave her a shot, then another. "Molly, run to me, call an ambulance. Say stroke. Tell them I asked them to call. There's a number taped to the phone." And Molly looked frightened at Aunt Natasha and rushed to the station. There at the gate stood a confused William. "What's there, Nancy soon?" "What Nancy? A man is dying there." Molly waved her hand and rushed into the room. By the time the woman was taken away, there was a crowd outside her house. "Molly, look after mine today." "I'll go with her." "Sure, Nancy, no problem. But what about you?" "Figure it out. Andrew's here." "Go, Nancy." "How's the freebie?" "Call me at home. I'll send a car to pick you up." "Thanks a lot, Andrew." Nancy stayed in town till morning. Toward morning, the woman started to feel a little better. "But you're a medical professional. You must realize it's too early to make any predictions." "Let's hope the woman is a country woman, a sturdy one." Nancy looked at her watch. She was catching the first bus to the village. That would do it. At the same time on bus 1 and 3 will come again. The first person Nancy saw as she stepped down from the foot of the bus it was Andrew. The last person Nancy expected to see here at all. "Nancy, I've been waiting for you for a hell of a long time." "Andrew, what are you doing here anyway?" "But you're missing." "So I figured." "Wait, you're supposed to be marrying a city girl who's no match for me." He wrinkled his nose crankily. "Stop it. It doesn't suit you." "The marriage didn't work out because. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's like you're not happy to see me." What should Andrew squint at? "How fast have you changed?" "Andrew, what does it matter if I've changed or not? You have no business being here." She wanted to walk past, but Andrew walked beside her. "Nancy, I get it. You're hurt. You're angry. All right, I agree with you. But I think we know each other well enough to overlook little things like arguments." "Andrew, you really don't get it, do you?" Nancy stopped. "You can go back to your town in peace." "Nancy, what?" "I think we'll at least talk." "Are you giving me tea?" "No, I'm not giving you tea." "Nancy, I'm having difficulties. And I don't need support both mentally and financially." Nancy squinted angrily. "It's what they would go for you, Andrew, along with your mommy." Andrew stopped smiling too. He was just about to say something when a car stopped nearby. "Nancy, trouble." She turned around. William got out of the car. "William, it's just hooked up and it won't go away." William quickly stepped between her and Andrew. "Young man, you don't understand. You were told to go where you were going." Andrew spat. "You'll regret it," looking for shelter. Andrew turned around and walked away. And Nancy even gasped with indignation. William turned to her. "You're not a cow. You're very beautiful, Nancy. When we go to meet my mom." "Jesus, William, you too." Nancy turned and rushed toward the house. William gave her a long look. 3 days later, Nancy went to the hospital again. Aunt Kathy brought some honey and a piece of homemade cheese. "Say hello to Vanessa. Let her get well. Don't spoil herself." "Okay, Aunt Kathy, I will." Nancy pushed open the door to the room and froze at her mother's bedside as Peter sat gently spoon-feeding her. "Hello." He glanced at her briefly, nodded, and continued to feed the woman. Nancy walked over and laid out on the table everything she had brought. "So how are you guys doing here?" Aunt Vanessa smiled. It didn't come out very well, though you could tell she was smiling. "Kathy sent you a reply and said she was correcting you." More like a nod. Peter left the room. Nancy sat for a while and then scrambled out as well. She saw him at once, came over. "Thank you, Nancy, for Mom saved Grandpa wouldn't, but Mom did." "Peter, Grandpa couldn't have been saved." "Believe me, you didn't try, you just left. See how you don't understand." "How can I explain it to you? Even if they had taken him to the hospital, he still wouldn't have recovered. And I don't want to hear anything. Peter, Nancy and I took 2 days off. I'm leaving again tomorrow and I won't be back for a long time." "Peter, what's it got to do with me?" "But I love you." Peter grinned wickedly. "Well, you'll love someone else." "It's the truth. Peter is family. And I'm leaving tomorrow, and I don't care what you're telling me right now." I don't believe you, and I honestly don't want to. Peter got up and went to the hospital. Peter, stop. He didn't turn around. She drove home, and not a single tear came out of her eyes. She got off the bus, walked to the house, and there was someone sitting on the bench at the gate. Nancy sighed. It was William, and apparently his mom. Well, apparently it was her fate that Nancy put a smile on her lips. Nancy William rushed towards her. Nancy, you forgive us, but you never have time. Nancy held out her hand in response. Nancy, come on in. As they walked through the yard. When they entered the house, Camille gasped. How big was this place in the city? Not everyone has one. Nancy turned with a smile, so there's not much room to swing in the city. They're small apartments. You're right. Nancy, what is there in the city if you can live as a human being in the countryside? Nancy threw off her jacket and began to set the table. She was in the mood to rip it off and throw it away. And then she remembered that one of the patients had brought her a beautiful bottle, saying that relatives had brought it from the south. She remembered how relaxing it was and quickly found it. Put it in the middle of the open table, looked at them, who were all looking at the house. Let's get to the table. Hungry everyone. The woman looked around. Oh, so many things to eat. Don't be shy. What's this? This is cognac from the south. I've never tasted cognac. For almost an hour, they talked about nothing, about the weather, about nature, about potatoes not being born. Then Camille, when apparently the cognac had done its work, spoke on the right subject. You on the walls, you realize that you are no longer young for the village and generally considered an old diva. As it happens, her William mine was almost 30 years old. Camille banged her fist on the table. William jumped up. Mom kept her voice down. Nancy watched the woman with interest. William just didn't know where to put himself. And Camille continued, you should be alone. Especially since my William has fallen head over heels in love with you. And you're a girl with blood and milk, with a respectable job, a house and a farm. There's a lot of independent women like you nowadays. Anyway, you should get married. She said it like she was making a point. William sat there red as a crab. She poured the walls for everyone and said, well, if we must, we'll get married. Camille took a swig and immediately wanted one. She and William carried her over to the couch. Vali kept apologizing. Nancy, I'm sorry, Mommy doesn't drink at all, just pour. Just a teaspoon before bedtime. I don't know what came over her. It's okay, let her rest. You can't drive. You can't make her drive so many kilometers at night. I wasn't thinking. Varia gave her a confused look. Nancy, what did you say about getting married? That's what I said. You want to marry me, don't you? Very much. Tell me honestly, is it for the house or not? No, Nancy, it's Mom who's always looking for an advantage. That's all. So she's starting to get ready for the wedding. Nancy S. threw the dishes in the sink. I stood there, thought about it, and decided it would help in the morning. What are you standing there for? Let's go where? What do you mean? Where to sleep? Just like that. Well, you can wait till the wedding if you want. She went to her room and William, as if he'd realized it, ran after her. In fact, Nancy realized that she was doing it because of the resentment she felt toward Peter. But she said to herself, it's all right, it's all right. Or so Peter told me quickly. Soon William showed up. Of course, even with his eyes closed, it was clear that it wasn't Peter. Vali turned away and drank, and she lay staring at the ceiling. The tears quietly flowed and flowed. In the morning, Nancy got up before everyone else. She quietly changed her mind. Dishes ready, put them away when she got dressed. Camille woke up as well. Oh, Nancy, how come I slept through everything? Where are you going? To work for breakfast. How are you getting home? Well, drop my keys off at the nurse's station. Well, whether it was on purpose or just a coincidence. But Camille showed up at the nurse's station just as it was getting crowded. Camille was sick. One of the old ladies came up to meet her, but you'd say she was sick. She brought the house keys to her future daughter-in-law. What daughter-in-law? Well, to which Nancy knows. You're lying, so our Nancy can marry your William. Why should I lie? You don't believe me? And the keys to his secret Camille went to the door of the study. Opened it on the wall, took the keys. I checked everything, turned everything off. Okay, Camille, thank you. The old woman closed the door and looked at everyone in the room. What's eaten and what's interesting about it? My William is so bad. He's not fit to be Nancy's husband. The same old woman laughed. No, why not bad? Not bad only or not very bad. But neither is your whole family. And Camille Evil flashed his eyes and headed for the exit at the door and stopped. He who laughs last laughs well and left. The old ladies whispered for a long time. One of them summed it up. Well, if you are 28 to 29 years old, you will marry a goat. The old ladies nodded, but still some feeling that everything was wrong did not leave them. Almost a month passed. William visited her often, but not as often as her future mother-in-law. You could say she moved in with Nancy completely. Sometimes she could cook dinner, but more often she just relaxed and almost never did the dishes. Nancy didn't pay any attention to that. She paid no attention to anything at all because she had other things on her mind right now, not happy thoughts at all. The fact was that Nancy was pregnant. She herself had only found this out a few days ago after doing some calculations. Nancy realized that the father was definitely not William. She breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, she didn't want children with William just yet. But she immediately grabbed her head. What was she going to do now? The wedding was in 2 weeks, a wedding to William. A baby inside her with Peter. Nancy didn't know what to do. Didn't really want to be a single mother. Sure, it wasn't exactly ancient times now, but the baby would still have a hard time. If she canceled the wedding in the hope that Peter would come and recognize her child later, she could be embarrassed. Nancy lay awake for several nights and then decided to tell William everything. She couldn't lie to him like that. He's not lazy, but he's still human. We didn't get to talk until just before the wedding. Camille kept close to them, living according to the principle that where they were, there she was. And I was always trying to teach them something. William doesn't need to talk to you. Let's talk. He came home from work and lay in front of the TV. A very serious conversation. William turned off the TV, sat on the couch. Is something wrong? Yes, Nancy sighed. You see, before you, I dated a guy. So we broke up. Then you got married, things got crazy. A few days ago, William got tense. What? That he's back? No, it's worse. I don't see how it could be worse. Worse for you. Anyway, William, I'm pregnant. Not with you. But I'm not terminating the pregnancy. Nancy blurted it all out in one breath and winced at how relieved she felt. William was silent. She opened her eyes. He sat silent, arms lowered listlessly. What's it like now? I don't know, William. I've told you everything. It's up to you. She left the room and then heard the front door slam. Apparently, William had left. Nancy sighed. Well, if he decided to call off the wedding, so be it. Only something told her he wouldn't cancel anything. William came the next day. Nancy, my mom, and I talked it over. Consulted who? Nancy thought she was going to faint at that confession. Mom, of course. You didn't want to lie to her, did you? No, but I thought it was our business for now. No, it's not. I mean, she'll think it's you. But well, that it'll be her own grandchild. Nancy sighed. Maybe he was right, but it was kind of gross, like getting dirty. So what did you and Mom decide? We decided you gave us no choice. Did that sound like that again? Not really, but Nancy just didn't know what to say. Nancy, let's just not talk about it, that's all. We don't know what's ahead of us. William, what do you mean? No, it's just that life is very unpredictable. It seemed like everything had been decided, but Nancy didn't feel very good about the conversation. They decided not to have a big wedding. Camille supported them in what? And rightly so, there's no money to waste. Better to buy something. Nancy grinned. Money, considering that it was mostly Nancy who was spending money on the wedding, was funny to hear. Of course, this was not at all how Nancy had envisioned the day from the wedding. It left the impression that they were just paying tribute to tradition. Nancy went back to work and William took a vacation. He said that first of all, he was tired, and secondly, they were obliged to give time off after the wedding. Nancy was already realizing that she was not going to break her leg very much. When the pregnancy was 3 months old, Nancy began to agonize. Yes, so much that just her soul was turned inside out. Whatever she did, whatever she took, she was throwing up all the time. She had already pulled out all her textbooks, but she couldn't find anything. She knew it was common, something she didn't like. Please, I'm going into town tomorrow for 2 days. He's away from the TV. Why do you need all these tests? To get registered. Okay, sure. He went back to watching TV. Nancy sighed that she was alone before she got married and after. That you can't get yourself registered. Nancy laughed. Come on, Camille. You can't do that. You could even be punished for it. It used to be so much easier. You got pregnant, had a baby, and that was it. And now a bunch of tests for all sorts of nonsense only harm the baby. Nancy went back to her room with a smile. It was nice that at least someone cared about the baby. Of course, you can't make Valia love someone else's child. But at least sometimes you can ask about her well-being. In 2 days, the nausea was almost completely gone. Nancy didn't understand anything. The doctor spread his hands. Look for a problem at home. Maybe food. Maybe country milk. You see, we can try to find the cause of what's making you so nauseous. But we'll only know that when you've had the baby. Nancy, and I knew it all too well myself, but try to ride to the city all the time is not good either. I just decided to be patient. That time would pass, and the nausea would pass. But I still decided to diet. Not to eat anything at all. What could it be? She came home. Her mother-in-law asked her what her tests were, what was normal, what wasn't normal. Only then did she let her rest. Nancy first wanted to go to her room, but then she decided to lie down on the veranda. It's a little cooler there, plus the air is fresh. She was already starting to fall asleep. She heard William and his mother come into the kitchen. The mother was reading to William. Nancy was about to pull the pillow over her ears when she realized the conversation was about her. William, you didn't bring any weed again. Mom didn't have time. Well, really, there's a whole wagon load of work to do. But get to work. Of course, it's more important. Did you hear that creep is back? What geezer? What Peter? The one your Nancy was having an affair with. William was quiet for a while. How do you know who she was having an affair with? You're the only one who doesn't know. Everyone else knows. So she came back. So what? Nancy's married now. Oh, but God gave her a fool of a son. You want me to tell you what could happen? Well, tell me this. Nancy could physically feel her breathing getting heavier. Peter's back. It was a nightmare, but she barely breathed. And she knew there was a reason her mother had brought William into the kitchen. Her room was very far away, which meant that what they were talking about was not for Nancy to know. And then there was the grass. What kind of weed? Nancy, maybe with honesty. She told you she wasn't pregnant by you. Any other woman would have just kept her mouth shut, and you'd be raising someone else's child. But she's going to tell you because he's about to have a kid. Who knows how he'll behave, but it's obviously not going to do us any good. Option 1, he'll tell Nancy that since they share a child, they should be together. The second one is he'll tell her to fuck off. Then when the baby's born, he'll start making demands. Yeah, money grubbing. See, for some reason, Mom thought she'd tell him something. And then for some reason she thought it was going to be that bad. Because, son, I've lived. I also really don't want to go back to our house. Back to your meager paycheck and the basins in the rain. I don't know where you're going with this. Am I supposed to walk next to Nancy so she doesn't, God forbid, talk to him? You don't have to walk next to her. Just get your ass up and go get some weed. If you give her a little more, she won't just be nauseous anymore. Everything should be fine. Then if we don't abort, we'll be rid of this baby in a couple or 3 weeks. And no one and nothing, son, will stop us from enjoying life. Nancy procured the edge of a pillow to keep from screaming at what she had just heard. Her mother-in-law is poisoning her baby. What should she do now? Run to the neighborhood police officer? And how will Nancy prove all this? She's got no one to stand up for her. Something told Nancy that if she went out there and told them to get lost, no one would leave. What would happen to her was not so clear. She heard a truck pull away from the house. That means William went to get weed. She's got to get to the people, and then we'll see what happens. She slipped quietly out of the porch and walked briskly toward Peter's house. She didn't understand why, though of course she realized that if anyone could protect her, it was him. But everything would have to be told. Everything absolutely. She yanked open the wicket, peeked out. No one seemed to notice her. Took a breath. Who are we hiding from? Nancy shuddered. It was a voice she would have recognized from 1,000. Peter, hello. I need to talk to you. My husband doesn't scold. And Nancy couldn't hold back any longer. At first she just cried. And then she got really hysterical. Peter was looking at her terrified. Nancy, do you have him? That he's hitting you. I'm gonna beat the hell out of him. No, he doesn't. Then what? Let's go in the house. He took Nancy under his arm and quickly led her home. Aunt Vanessa gasped, Nancy, baby, what's the matter with you? Hold on, I'll get you some water. While Nancy sang loudly, banging her teeth against the edge, Peter and his mother and watched her intently. Nancy set the glass down, calmed down a little, sighed. There's something I need to tell you. Peter sat down on the chair in front of her. Go on then. I don't think the story will be too interesting. But go ahead. Nancy missed the moment when Peter put his mask back on. I don't care. Let him act however he wants to act. It'll only help. She sighed again. I'm pregnant. Peter smirked. That's very valuable information. Nancy sighed again. Not from my husband. It's from you, isn't it? He stood up, then sat down. Nancy, why would you do that? If you weren't married. But why would you lie now? And I'm not lying. But I didn't come here to tell you about the pregnancy. Right before the wedding, I told William that I was expecting a baby and that it wasn't his. He and my mom were deciding what to do, but they decided to let it be. I calmed down, relaxed, and decided that never in your life will you ever know you're having a baby. Peter clenched his fists but remained silent. Aunt Vanessa moved closer to her and stroked her arm. Don't worry. Tell me. Nancy somehow felt calmer, and she went on talking. After Nancy had finished her story, Vanessa said that her grandmother in Nice was a pain in the ass. Apparently, he only got it from her. After all, they want to destroy a living soul. Peter didn't get up from his mom. Not just a living soul. They want to ruin my child. Nancy raised his head. Peter, I don't want anything from you. I won't ask you for anything. Just help. And I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm just afraid to go home. But we'll talk about what happens next later. Right now, we have other things to think about. This is a very delicate situation. As you can imagine, it's no big deal. Especially since the tests didn't show anything. There's no way to prove it. What's most important now? Vanessa's up. The most important thing is not to jeopardize the lives of the baby and Nancy. We need to save all these proceedings for later. That's also true. But we can't let them go unpunished either. You realize what they're doing is a real crime. I do realize that, but I'm not letting Nancy go in there. Mom, wait. Would you call James? Vanessa blushed. James had only recently come to their village. He had been in the militia, and when he retired, he had bought a house and left the city apartment to his son, who, by the way, also continued his work. Vanessa and James began a friendship and then a romance. They kept it a secret. James didn't understand why, though. Why do I have to go call him? Go get him. He's your neighbor, too. Mom, please go. He'll understand you quicker. Vanessa, I wanted to say something else, but I changed my mind and ran out the door. Peter moved closer to Nancy, took her lessons in his. Nancy, you hear me? Don't be afraid. Nobody's gonna hurt your baby. Nancy, even though I was very upset, I noted that Peter said yours, not ours. So be it. She doesn't care. The important thing is that no one threatens her baby. Nancy was sure she was going to have a daughter. 15 minutes later, Vanessa returned. She was accompanied by a distinguished-looking man. The girl had to tell the story again. There you go. I thought this couldn't happen in the village. So it's for the house, for the money. That's what they can do. The way I see it, it's not really about the baby. It's the house that's at stake. These guys are all over it. Is that what it is? Grass, you say. It's really not that hard to find out what she's getting. It's just that you need credentials. You sit here, I'll go get my son. Peter's up too. But how? We don't know anything from what Nancy says. James smiled. A good bloodhound. Everything will find weed, and it will leave its mark either in the car or at home or in that old house. He turned to Nancy. You better lie down, run, or better yet, sleep. All this won't be soon. And you need to rest. And don't go outside, all of you. God forbid they suspect anything and that's it. We'll never find anything. Nancy lay down on Peter's bed with pleasure. Everything here in the room smelled, and they were so pleasantly exciting. Peter peeked in on her a couple times, but Nancy was sweetly asleep. It was as if she had stopped worrying. Realized that she was treated very differently in this house. It was voices that woke her up, and then a light flashed in the room. Peter stood on the threshold and smiled. Well, you get up to bed, you need to testify. They've already taken your relatives. Nancy sat up abruptly. How? Just like that. William came home, Mother's waiting. She says you're missing. So they went looking for you. They've got the whole place surrounded. They forgot all about what they left in the car. James says that wood only looks safe, but in the right hands it could be poison. Nancy, just bear with me. Answer all the questions. Okay, Peter. Is there anything else to eat? I'm eating out of my mind right now. I haven't eaten since this morning. He looked at her, then he laughed. Well, sure, we'll feed you. You have. 15 minutes later, Nancy was gnawing on a large tea sandwich and answering questions. She had so far refused to eat more serious food just so as not to embarrass the uniformed people, but she was already imagining how she would return the plate of soup that Vanessa was now sorting out. She went over everything one more time, answered a few questions, and the policeman left. After a hearty dinner, she felt sleepy again. I should probably go home. Now that I'm not nauseous, I'm hungry all the time, eating and sleeping. Vanessa laughed. That's normal, kiddo. You eat and sleep with us tonight. You can go home tomorrow. Peter nodded. You know, I'd love to crash on his bed again. Let her sleep wherever she wants. If there's nowhere else, she can move just to sleep without disturbing him. Peter did come to her, lay down in his clothes, put his arms around her, and they fell asleep. How good it felt in his arms. She couldn't even think. How because she just fell asleep. Woke up in the morning, he was gone. She goes into the room. There's a distraught Vanessa sitting at the table. Where did Peter go? He's gone like a tumbleweed again, honestly. He left like that, but he left a note like that. He wrote it. I need to find out about myself, whether he's so attracted to his job, romance, and all that, or he's just a born fool. Nancy sank helplessly into a chair. She decided the night before that everything was going to be different. Peter again. The girl stood up. I'm going to go, Aunt Vanessa. I have to go to work soon. Are you feeling all right? Nancy smiled very well, didn't she? Here, take this with you to work. I baked buns and cutlets. Oh, you don't have to, I do. And remember, if my son is a fool. Do you have it? I got it, and I'm not leaving you. Nancy smiled sadly and walked out of the house. Vanessa escorted her out with a look. God, poor girl, she had been through so much. The time passed very quickly. Nancy had only been called to the police once, and then Vanessa and James had gone to court with her. In general, lately she had the impression that she had new parents, that Vanessa and her James were just a kite over her and fed her, constantly tried to see her off and invite her to visit. Nancy didn't resist. She was very much pleased. She had not heard from Peter, and she had given up waiting. She had enough to do. At the trial she felt sick when William and his mother began to yell at each other in public, and at her too. The girl's eyes went blurry. It was a long time ago. The trial ended without her. She called an ambulance in advance. As soon as the very first contractions began, I knew that as long as they would get there, and also the first labor. They brought her to a room with 2 other women. There was still time, and even though the environment and stomach pains were not conducive to conversation, they got to know each other. One woman came for her 3rd child and the other, like Nancy, for her 1st. The labor had gone well. An exhausted Nancy threw herself on the couch. The doctor said, No, look, you're all from the same room. All the girls here still have a princess. Nancy smiled. She fell into a dream. Thought her princess would be the princess herself. The first one to be discharged was the one who was having her third child. But girls, happily, I've had enough, and I wish you at least one more visit. Nancy laughed. Oh, let's get away from this rosebud for a while. Vanessa called at the maternity hospital. Every day she had come twice already. She was so excited that Nancy almost cried. Well, my princess, home tomorrow. The baby wrinkled her nose and Nancy laughed. Vanessa and James will be coming to pick her up tomorrow. The weather in the morning was as if it had heard that the happy mommy was being discharged from the maternity hospital. It had been pouring rain for 10 days at least. It's sunny this morning. Look at the weather. She was packing. Nancy came to pick you up. She smiled, turned to her neighbor. That's it. Bye. Have a nice day. You hugged her, and you too. Your Peter will definitely come to his senses. Yesterday, before they were discharged, lying in the dark, they had a heart-to-heart. Nancy told her roommate's story. It turns out that her man, as soon as he found out about the pregnancy, fled in an unknown direction. How are you? Oh, Nancy, I'm fine. Mom and Dad turned out to be the best. They won't leave me. I used to hurt them so much before. The nurse took the baby away and Nancy gave her neighbor another big hug and kiss. Be sure to come and visit me. The baby needs fresh air. I have a huge house, so take your parents too. She followed the nurse to the exit. It wouldn't be long before she was finally home. The doors opened and Nancy froze. Standing right in front of her was Peter. He was in a suit. She had never seen him in such parade before, so she hardly recognized the nurse, carried her daughter out, and Peter rushed to her. She asked sternly, "You, Daddy?" He nodded in confusion. "I'm a nurse," she smiled broadly. "Will you take your beauty?" Peter gingerly took the pouch, peeked inside and looked at Nancy. She's so tiny. Nancy, I wanted to kill him. The mood was gone. What are you doing here? What's what? I'm picking you and your daughter up from the hospital. You didn't have to. We did fine on our own. In case you need to leave in a hurry, like you always do. Nancy looked at him angry and Peter looked at her confused. Nancy, I'm sorry, I'm not going anywhere. I don't believe you. She took her daughter from his arms and went down the stairs. Peter stood there for a while. Then he rushed after her. He overtook her, stopped. Nancy, forgive me, you fool. Marry me. Nancy stopped. Did she feel like screaming? Yes, I do. But she restrained herself. I'll think about it. James and Vanessa hurried from the car to them. Nancy, Vanessa's daughter, hugged her, and Nancy burst into tears. Daughter, how long had it been since she had heard someone call her that? They all got into the car, Peter behind the wheel. When the car started, Nancy noticed how carefully he drove around all the potholes, how he drove as if he were carrying crystal. She smiled a little, and Vanessa leaned over to her ear and whispered right to Nancy. And even though that knucklehead is my only and favorite son, you need to let him know how wrong he is. And sat down again as straight as anything. Nancy laughed softly. It seemed she had been very lucky to have a mother-in-law this time. One could only dream of such a one. This time the wedding was exactly what Nancy had always dreamed of. A lavish dress, a sea of guests that filled her big house, gifts, wine, and shouts of bitter. She agreed to marry Peter. After 3 months, he gave the whole one eyes and noses left. Every day after work he went to her, bought up in the store all the toys that were there. Nancy only grabbed his head. When he came joyful with a big coloring book, he showed it to Helen and said, "Oh, you'll grow up a little, and you and I will draw here." Peter, this and the books will still be lying around for at least 3 years. He looked at her perplexed. Well, at least we'll already have it. And we'll buy another one later. She then sighed, well, what am I going to do with you? You'll buy a house full. Nonsense. I'll have to look after you. Nancy, is it? Yes. He picked her up in his arms, spun her around, shouted something, then set her down and said, you'll be the happiest woman ever. I promise you that.